Hey everyone, my favorite part of the day is finally here. Getting to sit down and share some mysterious stories from around the world with you. Thank you so much for sending in all your incredible experiences. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll be the first to know when a new video goes live. And now, without further ado, let's get into today's mysterious stories. Good night. I'm not gonna lie, I'm still shaken up from what happened last night. There's this stretch of woods not too far from my house, and around here, everybody's got a story about that place. People say it's haunted, and honestly, after everything I've experienced out there, I don't really laugh that stuff off anymore. My cousin and I went out there late to smoke by the river. At one point, he sent me down the trail alone to fill up a bottle with water for the bong. I've had weird things happen in those woods before too. Tall, shadowy figures, something pale running on all fours near the road one night. That heavy feeling like you've stepped somewhere you absolutely do not belong. Just a lot of stuff that leaves you with this deep, sick feeling in your stomach. But that night, I wasn't listening to any of that. I was feeling way too confident. We had a weapon back at the car, and I guess I let that get in my head. So while I was out there alone, way too far from my cousin, way too far from the car, I said something stupid. I actually called out into the woods. I said, "Hey, Spooky Joey, you out here?" The second I think back on that, I cringe. It was so dumb. I was basically mocking whatever's out there, like I invited it to notice me. I got to the water, and that's when I started hearing these strange thuds off in the distance. Then I heard this loud whoop, like somebody yelling with this weird burst of excitement. Not like a normal voice either. It echoed in a way that made my skin crawl. I filled the bottle as fast as I could and started heading back. That's when I heard it, this laugh. Faint at first, then again, and then one more time. Enough that I couldn't pretend I was imagining it anymore. It sounded far off, but clear enough to make my chest tighten. It felt like something was letting me know, "I hear you. I'm here." I got back to the car, trying to act normal, and we started smoking in the parking lot by the river. It's a pretty open area, but on both sides it's just thick forest. And the woods to our right were way too active. My cousin suddenly looked up and saw this small, amber-colored light moving through the tree branches. He said it looked almost like a little glowing ball, maybe the size of a fist, weaving between the limbs. I didn't catch it myself, but the look on his face told me he wasn't messing around. Then we started hearing footsteps. Not close enough to see anyone, but definitely there. Like something pacing through the brush. Every so often we'd hear a noise like something being dropped on the ground. Once, I swear I saw a shape rise up just above the bushes, like it was peeking at us, and then it ducked down again so fast I almost questioned myself. The worst part, though, was the voices. Every now and then, we'd hear what sounded like people talking somewhere deeper in the woods. Not loud enough to understand, just broken pieces of conversation drifting toward us. A word here, another word there, and then another voice answering back. That's what really got to me. It sounded like more than one thing out there. And mixed in with that, we kept hearing those whoops again. Some distant screams, too. Maybe animals, maybe not. But one of them, I swear, sounded like a grown man yelling. That area is isolated, especially that late at night. The parking lot was empty except for our car. There shouldn't have been anyone else out there. Toward the end, that bad feeling finally hit me. You know that heavy, sinking feeling where your body knows before your mind does? That's what it was. Like every instinct in me was saying, "You need to leave right now." Then we heard that chuckling again. No bugs, no frogs, nothing. It was like the whole woods had gone still, like even the trees were holding their breath. We left right after that. Whatever it was, it didn't follow our car this time. And that's the only good thing I can say. Because the last few times we'd been out there, it did. You know, looking back, I think I felt something was wrong with that house long before I ever had a reason to say it out loud. It was a fairly new place, built sometime around 2001 or so. A 3-bedroom duplex with 2.5 bathrooms and a finished basement. My parents owned it, and I rented it from them. And no, before you ask, there was definitely no family discount involved. At that point in my life, work was unstable, and everything felt kind of up in the air. So I wanted somewhere I could leave without getting tangled in a long lease. My parents liked the setup too, because if they ever needed to stay nearby for a few days, they had a place. On paper, it sounded perfect. But once I actually moved in, it just never felt right. I lived there by myself, which normally I liked, but honestly, the place felt way too big for one person. I barely used half of it. The basement was finished, and I had boxes of old collectibles and hobby stuff down there, but I almost never went in. There was a guest room upstairs with a bed my parents had put together, and that room mostly just sat there, untouched. Really, I only lived in a few corners of the house. My bedroom, the bathroom, the kitchen, and my office where I'd mess around on my computer. Even then, I had these habits that didn't make much sense. I never played games with headphones on. I always hurried to my room at night. And I never slept with the bedroom door open. Ever. Closed and locked every night. I had lived alone before, so it wasn't that. It was just that something in that house made me feel constantly on edge, like I could never fully relax. I used to hear noises all the time too. Thumps. Heavy bumps. What sounded like slow footsteps. Since it was a duplex, I kept telling myself it had to be the neighbors. But the weird thing was, I never heard normal neighbor sounds. No TV, no music, no muffled conversations. Just those dull, heavy thuds, like someone walking around with purpose. About a year later, my girlfriend started staying over more often. Things were good between us, and she helped me make the place feel warmer. We moved furniture around, added softer lighting, tried to make it feel less sterile. And still, no matter what we changed, there were parts of that house that felt deeply wrong. The guest room felt wrong. The upstairs hallway felt wrong. And the basement was the worst of all. It always felt like someone was standing just out of sight, watching. One night, we decided to try using the basement like a normal room. We brought blankets down, turned on a movie, tried to have a cozy little movie night. We lasted maybe half an hour. That was it. We both started feeling so uncomfortable we had to leave. My chest felt tight, and my girlfriend said it felt like something was pressing at her throat, like it was getting hard to breathe down there. That should have been enough for me, honestly. But the worst part of living there wasn't even when I was awake. It was the nightmares. There was one night when my girlfriend and I fell asleep with the bedroom door open, wide open, which almost never happened. That was the first time I saw it. In the dream, there was this figure standing at the foot of the bed. It was impossibly tall, almost touching the ceiling, maybe 8 feet or more. Its body was thin and bone-white, like it had been carved out of something dead and dry. Its hands ended in long, hooked claws. Its face was hollow, with deep black eyes, but way down in those sockets there was this red glow, like embers buried in ash. Its mouth hung open full of sharp teeth, and behind it were these wing-like bones, almost like the frame of bat wings without any skin or flesh. And it just stood there, staring at me, growling. I got up, went straight to the bathroom, then came back, shut the door, locked it, and only then could I even think about sleeping again. The thing is, that nightmare didn't happen once. It happened again, and again, and again. At least 5 more times while I lived there. And every single time, the bedroom door had been left open. Sometimes not even all the way, just cracked. At one point, I even tested it. I asked my girlfriend to wait until I was asleep and then open the door without telling me. I didn't know she'd done it. That night, I had the nightmare again. After a while, it stopped feeling like a dream and started feeling like some kind of pattern I couldn't explain. Then one night, something happened that changed the way I looked at all of it. I'd had that same nightmare again, but this time I woke up on my own before my girlfriend could shake me. I turned, half awake, trying to settle back down, and for just a second, I saw a woman standing beside the bed. She looked young, maybe mid-20s, light blonde hair, a dark headband. She had on a pale shirt and denim overalls. What struck me most was that she wasn't looking at me. She was looking toward the foot of the bed, exactly where that thing usually stood in the nightmare. Then I fully woke up, and she was gone. After that, both my girlfriend and I started to feel like there were maybe 2 different presences in the house. There was whatever that awful thing was, and then there was her. I'd be playing violin in the house by myself and get that prickling feeling that someone was listening. I'd turn around and almost catch movement slipping around the corner into the hall. My girlfriend would be folding clothes and suddenly swear she'd seen a woman in her peripheral vision. She'd hear noises when I wasn't even home. And somehow, over time, the feeling of being watched didn't always feel threatening. Sometimes it felt more like being observed by someone curious, quiet, present. The last really major thing that happened was not long before we moved out. I got hit with a brutal stomach bug one night, and my girlfriend had to be up early for work. I didn't want to keep her awake running back and forth to the bathroom, so I took a blanket and went into the guest room. Since I felt so sick, I left the door open. I was lying there, curled up, miserable, when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Not subtle footsteps, not house creaks. Actual footsteps. Slow, heavy, unmistakable. They came down the hall, into the guest room, up behind me. Then I felt the mattress dip, like someone had sat down on the edge of the bed. And then I felt a hand on my back. I mean that literally. I felt a hand resting on my back. And the strangest part is, I wasn't scared. The second I felt it, this huge wave of calm came over me. It was like all the pain and panic just softened. The hand moved gently, almost the way someone might rub your back when you're sick, like it was saying, "You're okay, just rest. You'll be all right by morning." And that night, for the first time with an open door, I slept straight through. No nightmare, no terror, nothing. After that, whenever I felt like I caught a glimpse of that woman around the house, I'd just say out loud, "Can you give me a little space right now? Thank you." And weirdly enough, it always seemed to help. I honestly got the feeling she liked being nearby when we were just living our lives. Cooking, folding laundry, playing music, moving through the house. Almost like she was drawn to that kind of ordinary warmth. And whenever one of us was hurting, it felt like she came closer, not to frighten us, but to comfort us. We did have one eerie bit of confirmation, if you want to call it that. A mutual friend of ours was into psychic stuff, and one time she came by during a party. With a bunch of people in the house, she said she didn't pick up much of anything. But later, when it was just the 3 of us, her whole expression changed. She looked upstairs and said, "It was outside your room before. Now it's downstairs. I really don't like whatever's in the basement." Then she described seeing a blonde woman with a headband in the upstairs hall. I had never told her that detail. Not once. That really stayed with me. It's been well over a year since we moved out now, and ever since leaving that place, everything stopped. No nightmares. No strange footsteps. No feeling of being watched. Nothing paranormal at all in our new home. And honestly, part of me still kicks myself for not trying harder to document it, because I know how unbelievable it sounds when you say it out loud. But when I think back on that house, what stays with me most isn't even the fear. It's the feeling that whatever was there wasn't just one thing. And somehow, in the middle of all that darkness, there was also something that seemed to care whether we were okay. Okay, so this is going to sound ridiculous, and honestly, I still feel a little silly saying it out loud. I've lived in my family's house for basically my whole life, close to 2 decades, and nothing strange had ever happened there before. It was always just home. Normal, quiet, familiar. If anyone brought up ghosts or hauntings or anything supernatural, I was always the person saying there had to be a logical explanation. Even now, at 25, that's still where my mind usually goes. But over the last few weeks, a couple of things happened that I still can't explain, and that's the only reason I'm even telling this story. Lately, I'd been digging into my Pennsylvania Dutch roots, mostly because I love local history. I got especially interested in powwow traditions and all the old folklore tied to them. I live not too far from a place with a long history connected to those stories, so I started reading everything I could find. It was fascinating stuff. I wasn't scared of it at all. I was just curious. The first weird thing happened one night after I'd spent a long time reading. I got up from my room upstairs and started walking toward the hall so I could go down the steps. The second I crossed my bedroom doorway, it was like I walked straight into this overwhelming wave of terror. And I don't mean I got startled. I mean full body, instant, crushing fear. My chest tightened, my heart started pounding, and for a few seconds it felt like all I could do was keep moving forward. I could breathe, technically, but it felt like I couldn't. My mind just went blank. I remember getting to the top of the stairs and stopping there, trying to catch my breath, thinking, what was that? The strangest part is that I reacted in a way I normally never would. I made the sign of the cross without even thinking about it, and I'm not even religious like that. It was just pure instinct. After a minute, the feeling was gone, almost as suddenly as it had started. I kept telling myself I must have spooked myself somehow. Maybe I was too immersed in the reading. Maybe I was anxious without realizing it. But the truth is, I hadn't felt scared before that moment at all. I was interested, not frightened. So that explanation never sat right with me. I didn't tell anyone. It sounded made up, even to me. Then a little while later, something else happened. It was daytime this time, bright out, and I was home alone. A delivery driver had just dropped off groceries, and my dogs, like always, started barking. Once the driver left, one of them settled down, but my older dog kept acting like somebody was still there. He went straight to the basement door and got weirdly focused on it. He was sniffing around, pacing a little, whining, staying right by the door like he was waiting for someone to come up. He only really acts like that when a family member comes in through the basement entrance. So I remember thinking it was odd right away, because I knew for a fact nobody else was home. So I walked over, and then I heard it. Footsteps. Very clear footsteps coming up the basement stairs. They were light, not heavy like boots or anything, but unmistakable. The old stairs have this specific sound when someone's on them, and that's exactly what it was. Step by step, getting closer to the door. Then it stopped. I just stood there frozen for a second, and then I locked the basement door. A few seconds later, the footsteps started again, but this time they went back down. Slow, steady, calm. Not rushed, just descending until the sound faded out. And my dog stayed right there, still watching the door, still waiting. Since then, nothing else has happened. And honestly, that might be the part that gets me the most. My house had always felt completely ordinary before, and now it does again. Whatever those moments were, they came out of nowhere and then just stopped. The only pattern I can think of is that both things happened when I was really deep into researching that history. Maybe it's connected. Maybe it isn't. Maybe I just noticed things I normally would have brushed off. I still don't know what I believe. I just know that for the first time in my life, my home felt unfamiliar, and I still can't fully explain why. So, this happened a few years ago, when I was about 20. I met this American traveler at a bus station in Paris. His name was Luca. He was a little older than me, maybe 28, and we ended up talking while we were waiting for our bus. It was one of those conversations that feels random at first, and then, suddenly you realize you've been sitting there for ages, completely absorbed. Luca had that kind of life that instantly pulls you in. He told me he spent part of the year back in the US, in Oregon, where he stayed with his mother, and the rest of the time traveling however he could, sometimes hiking, sometimes sailing. He worked in marine equipment, something to do with designing ropes and rigging for boats. I didn't fully understand it, but it sounded fascinating. He had this adventurous, restless energy, and before we parted, we exchanged Facebook contacts and stayed in touch. At that point in my life, I had just started university. I was living in a new city. It was cold. I didn't know many people yet, and I spent most evenings alone. I wasn't really going out much. I mostly stayed in, listening to music, watching shows, drawing, playing games, that kind of thing. So when Luca and I started talking regularly, it became this strange little window into another world. Because of the time difference, we usually spoke very late at night. Sometimes I'd still be awake at 2 or 3 in the morning, just listening to him tell story after story. And every single time, it felt like he had lived 10 lives already. He'd tell me about solo hikes, storms at sea, nights in tiny ports, strange encounters in the wilderness. Once he told me that while hiking alone in the mountains, he came across wild coyotes and had to fire his pistol into the air to scare them off. I remember just sitting there thinking, what kind of life is this? It felt so far from mine, almost unreal. At first, I was just captivated. He came from this place that seemed exotic to me, and everything about him felt bigger, rougher, more cinematic. Talking to him was an escape from my quiet little routine. But after a while, his stories started getting stranger. One night, he told me that while sailing near the Caribbean, he had seen the Flying Dutchman. I laughed immediately. I thought he was joking, but he wasn't smiling. He was completely serious. So I told him, half teasing, to keep going. And he did. He said the weather had changed all at once. The sea had gone strange, heavy somehow. And then he saw this enormous old ship ahead of him. Dark, silent, like something from another century. What really unsettled him, he said, was that it didn't appear on his radar at all. At first he thought it might be some abandoned vessel drifting at sea, maybe after an accident. So he moved closer. He said it looked ancient, and even though he couldn't see anyone on deck, he could hear music coming from it. That detail really stayed with me. The idea of hearing music from an empty ship in the middle of the sea. He said something about it felt deeply wrong. So he turned away and left as fast as he could. I didn't know what to do with that story. Part of me thought, okay, this is ridiculous. But another part of me was so fascinated by the way he told it. Not dramatically, not like he was trying to impress me, just plainly. Like he was describing something that had happened. And because of that, I didn't dismiss it completely. Then one night he brought up something I had never even heard of before. the Wendigo. He said that one evening, after a long day of hiking, they'd made camp, built a fire, eaten dinner, and were sitting there talking as it got dark. And then suddenly, Luca felt that there was something else there with them. He said he saw a shape near the fire. Not clearly, not like a normal person standing there, but some kind of figure, a presence, seated close by. At the same moment, his friend looked straight at him and silently signaled for him not to react, not to stare, not to acknowledge it. So they kept their eyes mostly on each other and tried to ignore whatever was beside them. Luca told me his friend had tears in his eyes. That's one of the details that really got to me. The fear of it felt real. After a few minutes, the presence was gone. Later, his friend explained that it was a Wendigo and said you should never give it attention because attention feeds it. Ignore it, and eventually it leaves. I remember exactly how I felt while he was telling me this, because it was late, my apartment was dark, and I was already the kind of person who got a little uneasy at night. Then he joked, very casually, that maybe there was one in my attic. And I know it sounds silly, but I was genuinely terrified. I barely moved after that conversation. I lay awake until morning, staring into the dark. What made it so disturbing wasn't just the story itself. It was the sincerity. He never sounded like someone trying to scare me for fun. He sounded like someone telling me the truth. The last part is the one I still think about the most. Luca lived part of the year with his mother in an old house in Oregon. He told me from the very beginning that the house was haunted, but he said it so calmly that it almost disarmed me. He talked about it the way someone might talk about a leaky faucet or a creaky floorboard. Just a fact of daily life. He said he and his mother had learned to live with whatever was there, that you had to respect the place, respect the people who had been there before, and not fight everything you didn't understand. There was one area of the house he especially hated, the basement. He told me that when he was younger, he had felt something hostile down there. He said he once saw a face watching him from the dark, and that there was a large black mark on one of the stone walls that seemed to hold all the bad energy in the room. After that, he avoided going down there whenever he could. Naturally, I was curious, so one day I asked him to show me the house over video call. It was nighttime for me and afternoon for him. He started walking around, showing me little things that had become normal to them. Small bowls of salt placed in certain corners, mirrors on the window ledges. He explained that his mother believed they helped with the energy in the house. Then he passed through one room and said, very casually, "The lights switch on by themselves sometimes. We just turn them off when we notice." And sure enough, a lamp was on for no apparent reason. He went into the living room and showed me this heavy wooden cabinet. He said the drawers always slid open on their own, and that he and his mother were used to pushing them shut whenever they walked by. A couple of them were open while he was filming, so he closed them. One of the drawers had nothing in it except a Bible, which at the time I found strangely funny. Then he brought me to a hallway. There was a trap door in the floor leading down to the basement. He didn't open it. He just stepped closer to show me. And the moment he did, my phone started going crazy. The image broke apart into colored static, red and blue streaks across the screen. The sound turned into this horrible, distorted crackling, and underneath it, there was this deep buzzing noise. Everything froze and stuttered for a few seconds. And then, just like that, the image cleared. He had backed away fast. I asked him if he had seen what happened, and he said yes. He told me he had never seen the call glitch like that before. What struck me was that he wasn't screaming or panicking. He looked shaken, definitely, but he wasn't hysterical. Meanwhile, I was absolutely frozen. My heart was pounding so hard it felt painful. Even though I was thousands of kilometers away, it felt like something had crossed the distance between us for those few seconds. Like whatever was in that house had brushed right up against me too. And I remember thinking, what if he's been telling the truth this whole time? We stayed on the call. After a while, the tension eased a little, and we started talking about something else. Then I heard a sound. At first, I couldn't place it. It was low, steady, almost vibrating. Then I realized it was a voice. Very deep voice. Not speaking English, not speaking anything I could recognize. Just reciting something in this slow, solemn, chant-like way. I was studying linguistics back then, and I was obsessed with languages, accents, sound patterns, all of that. But this, I couldn't identify it at all. It didn't sound like normal speech to me. It sounded almost ritualistic, like a prayer being intoned by someone with an impossibly deep voice. I asked Luca if he heard it too. He said yes. He followed the sound into the living room, and it seemed to be coming from a Bluetooth speaker that was lying on the floor, plugged in to charge. But the speaker was off. He picked it up, messed with it, and the chanting stopped. Then, almost immediately, another voice came through, this time clearly in English. It turned out the television had turned itself on, and the news was playing. I asked him if the TV had already been on. He said no. He switched it off, and after that, everything went quiet. Nothing dramatic happened after that. No final reveal, no explanation, no neat ending. Eventually, life moved on. I met someone, got into a relationship, changed my routines, and Luca and I slowly lost touch. But I still think about him. For a long time, I kept him in this category in my mind. An eccentric, maybe a storyteller, maybe someone who blurred truth and fiction because he liked the effect it had. And honestly, part of me still wonders if that's all it was. But that night on the video call unsettled me in a way I still can't fully explain. I can still picture the static. I can still hear that voice. And every now and then, I catch myself thinking about all those stories again. The ghost ship, the thing in the woods, the basement, the speaker, the TV, and asking myself the same question I asked that night. What if he really was telling the truth? I need to tell you about something that happened to me, because even now, I still can't fully explain it. At the time, I was in a really bad place mentally. I'd just come out of the end of a long relationship, almost a decade, and it completely broke me. On top of that, I was serving time. I had already done about a year, got out for a short while, then got recalled and sent back, this time to an old Victorian prison in Hull. Somehow, I managed to get a cell on my own, and honestly, that probably helped keep me together more than anything else. I wasn't taking drugs. I wasn't losing touch with reality. Nothing like that. I was just hurting deeply. Properly low. The kind of low where your mind goes to dark places even when you don't want it to. Anyway, this happened late one night, around 1:45 to midnight. I'd switched the TV off and was trying to get to sleep. The cell wasn't completely dark because the yard lights came through the bars, so I could still make out the room. I was lying flat on my back, looking up toward the ceiling, with the wall to my left and the rest of the cell open on my right. My eyes had only been shut a few minutes. I wasn't asleep. Maybe I was just starting to drift, but I was definitely not gone. Then I opened my eyes, and there it was. Standing right over me was this figure, about 3 or maybe 4 feet tall, thin, shaped like a person but not really human-looking. It was completely black. Not just shadow black either. I mean the darkest black I've ever seen in my life. No face, no eyes, no detail at all. Just this solid, unnatural darkness leaning over my stomach, close enough that it should have been touching me, but it wasn't. I reacted instantly. I shot up, slammed myself against the wall, and scrambled to the end of the bed where the light switch and TV were. I was yelling, swinging, kicking, throwing punches, full panic, pure terror. But every time I tried to hit it, my hands just went straight through it. like there was nothing there physically, even though I could see it as clearly as anything else in the room. That's the part that still gets me. It didn't jump back. It didn't react. It didn't rush at me. It just stayed there, perfectly still, in the exact same position. Then it started to fade. Slowly. Not instantly, not like something in a dream where it just disappears and you wake up confused. It took maybe 10, maybe 15 seconds to fully go. And I was wide awake the entire time, absolutely hysterical, heart pounding so hard I could hear it. Once it was gone, I turned the TV back on just to ground myself, to check the time, to prove to myself I was really awake. It was 12:01 a.m. The next day I told the prison officers and they just laughed it off. Said it was sleep paralysis. But they didn't really listen to what I was saying. I kept telling them I wasn't paralyzed. I moved straight away. I jumped up. I ran. I fought. One of the prison chaplains offered to bless the cell, which honestly unsettled me even more. Because why offer that unless he'd heard something similar before? Then I found out something else. Another prisoner had taken his own life that same night. When I heard the rough timeline from staff checks, it sounded like it could have happened not long before, or not long after, what I experienced. Now, I'm not saying the two things were connected. I honestly don't know what to think. But once that thought got into my head, I couldn't shake it. For the next 4 months of my sentence, I slept with the light on every single night. And sometimes, even when there was nothing there, I could still feel a presence in the cell. You know that feeling when you just know someone else is in the room, even if you can't see them? It felt exactly like that. I've never experienced anything like it before, and never since. I'm not even someone who goes around believing in ghosts or spirits. I've always tried to be rational about things. But this felt real. And I still don't know what it was. So, this happened in early August of 2023, when I was wrapping up the 5th day of a solo motorcycle trip back home. I've been on the road for days, just me, my bike, and whatever I could strap down and carry. That night, I booked a campsite near the lake at Lincoln Trail State Park in Marshall, Illinois, thinking I'd have a simple place to rest before finishing the trip. But when I got there, the site that was marked online as a tent campsite was actually covered in rough gravel. It was obviously meant more for an RV than for somebody trying to sleep in a little tent. Since I was traveling light, I didn't have any extra padding or ground cover with me, nothing that would make sleeping on that gravel even remotely comfortable. So I started looking around. Just north of the campsite, the ground dropped off toward the lake through a wooded slope. I tied off a bright guideline to a tree and made my way carefully down the incline. A little ways in, maybe 15 yards or so from the water, I found a patch of level, dry ground where the trees opened up just enough. It felt tucked away, quiet, and a lot softer than the campsite above, so I decided that was where I'd set up for the night. I pitched my tent, laid out my sleeping gear, and then climbed back up using the guideline just to make sure I could get in and out safely. Back at the main site, I had a simple dinner, one of those ready-to-eat meals, washed up as best I could, and turned in sometime around 9:30. I wasn't especially on edge that night. I was tired, sure, but not completely worn down. Honestly, I usually enjoy traveling alone. There's a kind of peace in it, you know? No schedule, no pressure, just the road and your own thoughts. And I'm not somebody who remembers dreams very often, which is part of why this stuck with me the way it did. At some point in the night, I dreamed I was sitting outside my tent in that exact same spot, except it was daytime. Bright, still, calm. I was facing the lake, just looking out over the water, when all at once everything went silent. And I mean completely silent. No birds, no insects, no movement in the trees, not even wind. It was the kind of silence that makes your skin go cold before your mind even catches up. That's when I noticed someone coming toward me from along the shoreline to the east. At first, it was just the figure of a woman moving slowly in my direction. But the closer she got, the more wrong she looked. She seemed frail, almost unnaturally so. Her skin had this pale, grayish cast to it, like all the life had drained out of it. She was wearing a plain, faded dress, stained with dirt, and her hair, what looked like thin silver hair, hung in muddy, tangled clumps around her face. I remember noticing her feet because at first I thought she had shoes caked in mud, but then I realized they were bare. Just filthy, dark with muck and leaves stuck to them. I remember trying to speak to her. I asked if she was okay, if she needed help, but she didn't answer. She just kept coming, staring straight at me with this empty, fixed look. No expression, no sign she even really heard me. And when she got close enough that I felt I needed to move, I stood up and started backing away, slow at first, because I didn't want to turn my back on her. Then the dream changed. It was night all of a sudden. Not a gradual shift, just instant darkness. And she was only a few feet away from me now, but that didn't make it less terrifying. Her mouth opened wide, wider than it should have, like she was screaming at me, except there was no sound at all. Not a single sound. She reached toward me, and I saw that her fingers looked twisted, almost root-like too. And I can't fully explain this part, but the feeling that hit me in that moment was pure dread. Not just fear, dread. Like every part of me knew that if she touched me, something terrible would happen. Right before her hand reached my arm, I forced myself awake. I sat up in my tent sometime between 1 and 1:30 in the morning, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might shake the whole tent. I was absolutely frozen. I didn't want to move. I didn't even want to breathe too loudly. I just listened, and all I could hear were normal nighttime sounds. Crickets, the soft water against the shoreline. Once in a while, something small moving through the leaves. Nothing strange, nothing dramatic, but I was still terrified. I had to deliberately slow my breathing and talk myself down in my own head before I could even begin to calm down. It took a long time before I could fall back asleep. At least an hour, maybe more. The rest of the night passed without anything else that I remember. When I woke up the next morning, I felt uneasy in a way I couldn't really shake, but I was rested enough to get back on the bike and keep going. I just ended up taking a few extra breaks that day because the whole thing stayed with me. And honestly, even now, I still go back and forth on it. Maybe it was just a vivid nightmare brought on by the unfamiliar place, the long ride, and sleeping down near the lake. That would be the logical explanation. But it didn't feel like an ordinary dream. It felt unusually real, like I had stepped into something instead of imagined it. So I don't know. Maybe it was nothing more than a bad dream, but I've never quite been able to convince myself of that. You know, this happened more than 20 years ago, back when I was studying electronics. In those days, I never went anywhere without music. This was long before streaming, of course, so my soundtrack came through a cassette Walkman. Mine was a slim, old Sony model with a key lock switch on the side, and that little detail matters more than you'd think. Every day I followed the same route to school. Part of it meant crossing a wide, busy boulevard just before I arrived. And like a lot of young people, I thought I was invincible. Instead of using the pedestrian crossing, I'd usually cut across the road a good 40 or 50 meters before it. Looking back, it was such a reckless thing to do. That day was completely ordinary at first. I'd eaten at home, put on my headphones, pressed play, and headed out like always. I reached the usual spot where I crossed the boulevard, and without really thinking, I stepped forward. And then, right at that exact moment, the music stopped. Not faded out, not crackled. It just stopped. So I stopped too, with one foot hanging just a few centimeters from the street. If the music hadn't cut out, my next step would have taken me straight into the road. At that same instant, a city bus tore past in front of me at full speed. When I say it brushed past me, I mean it. It was so close I could see my own reflection in the windows as it flew by. I can still picture it now. Everything felt like it slowed down for a second. The music cuts out. I freeze. The bus flashes past my face. It all happened in less than a heartbeat, but it felt endless. I remember thinking, my God, I nearly got myself killed. Then the shock hit me all at once. I started shaking. I was furious at myself. I hadn't even looked before stepping out. I just stood there trembling, feeling sick, completely rattled, with my Walkman suddenly silent in my hands. I moved under a nearby bridge to catch my breath and calm down. My first thought was that the batteries must have died at the perfect moment. That had to be it, right? So I pulled the Walkman out from inside my jacket and tried turning it back on. Nothing. Then I noticed the hold switch was still on. That meant I hadn't accidentally pressed anything. The controls had been locked the whole time. I switched the lock off, pressed play again, and the machine came right back to life. The battery indicator showed they were still full. I just stared at it. I was already shaken, but that's when I felt truly stunned. The Walkman had shut off for no reason I could understand, at the exact second it needed to. And because it did, I stopped before stepping into the road. Call it luck, a glitch, fate, divine intervention. I honestly don't know. But whatever it was, it saved me that day. One more step, just one, and that bus would have hit me. What stayed with me most was that glimpse of my own face in those windows, so close it was like looking into a mirror. I've never forgotten it. So, I want to tell you about a house in Corinth, New York, that I ended up investigating more than once. Part of the reason was simple. We got more strange, unexplainable activity there than almost anywhere else. But the bigger reason was the woman who lived there. She was deeply worried about her teenage daughter, who had gone through this sudden, unsettling shift in behavior. Mood swings, depression, things that just didn't feel like her. The house had belonged to their family for generations, and they knew for sure that at least 2 people had died there. There was also this old family rumor that, years and years before, someone had done some kind of ritual or witchcraft in the attic. But the moment that has stayed with me all this time happened in the kitchen. My team and I were sitting there with the homeowner, running an EVP session. Honestly, at first, it felt pretty quiet. Nothing especially intense. We were just about ready to call it and move on when, all of a sudden, the space under the kitchen table turned ice cold. Not a little colder, drastically colder. It felt like the temperature had dropped 20 degrees in an instant. I had a handheld thermometer with me, so I leaned down and checked the air beneath the table, then compared it to the air above it. The difference was real. Sharp. Immediate. Now, this woman's mother had passed away in that home. More than that, she had died right there in that same kitchen. And in that moment, I got this strong feeling that maybe her mother was with us. So I looked at the woman and gently said, "I think your mom might be here. Is there anything you want to ask her? Anything you want to say?" She started speaking to her mother. I don't remember every word she said, and honestly, most of it isn't what matters. What I do remember is this. She stopped in the middle of talking, looked upward for a second, and then, in this soft, almost fragile voice, said, "Do you remember that little squirrel we used to feed every morning? Do you remember what we used to call him?" A week or so later, I was reviewing the audio. When I got to that part, I noticed a fluctuation in the waveform right after she asked the question. So I put on headphones, turned the volume way up, and listened carefully. At first, I wasn't sure. I replayed it again, then again. And what I kept hearing, clearer each time, was the word nibbles. I went back to the house a few days later to go over everything we had captured. There were a few other odd bits of evidence, but nothing that came close to this. When we got to that clip, I wrote the word nibbles on a piece of paper and kept it hidden. Then I played the audio for her and asked, "Tell me what you hear." The moment the clip ended, she started crying. Before she could even answer, I put the paper in front of her. She looked down at it, and she just broke. Through tears, she told me that Nibbles was the nickname her mother had made up for that squirrel. Nobody else would have known it. Nobody. And in that kitchen, on that day, it really felt like we had reached her mother. Even now, telling you this, I get chills. It was close to 20 years ago, and I still haven't forgotten it. Some moments just stay with you, and that one absolutely did. I've had this happen to me a couple of times in my life, and even now, saying it out loud feels strange. These weren't ordinary dreams. They happened when I was in that half-asleep, half-aware state, sometimes lucid, where I knew I was dreaming and could usually guide what was happening. But these moments were different. They came in suddenly, took over completely, and felt more real than anything I'd ever experienced in sleep. What makes them so hard to dismiss is that both times, they seem to line up with real-world events. Big events. The kind you can actually verify. And both times, the experience shocked me awake, and I checked the time right away because I knew something about it was deeply off. I should say this too. When people go through something they truly believe is paranormal, they usually don't rush to tell everyone. At least, I didn't. The first time this happened, it involved a major national tragedy, and I kept it to myself for years. I didn't want to sound like I was trying to make someone else's suffering into my story. I still don't. But it happened, and I've never been able to fully explain it away. Back in 2001, I was in graduate school. I had a late morning class that day, so I was still asleep when it happened. I was having one of those calm, lucid dreams where everything felt light and easy, and I was fully in control. Then all at once, it changed. No transition, no warning. It was like being yanked into someone else's final moments. The whole thing only lasted a few seconds, but the fear in it was overwhelming. I can still remember the sensation more than the visuals. It felt like moving impossibly fast, faster than my mind could process. I had this vague sense of seeing through someone else's eyes, but what really came through was their terror. Pure terror. It was the absolute certainty that death was only seconds away. I woke up violently, almost falling out of bed, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I looked at the clock immediately. It was 8:47 a.m. Eastern Time. At first, I didn't connect it to anything. I just got up and went on with my morning. But later, when people began describing what those final moments on one of the planes might have felt like, something inside me turned cold. The speed, the city rushing by, the helplessness. It matched the feeling of that dream in a way I couldn't ignore. For years after that, I replayed it in my mind. I questioned myself constantly. I wondered if I had imagined the connection after the fact, and because nothing like it happened again for such a long time, I started to doubt my own memory. Then, not too long ago, it happened a second time. This one came out of nowhere. I wasn't even in a vivid dream, not that I remember. It was more like another scene suddenly cut in, sharp and immediate. I found myself looking out over a bright open square, somewhere warm and sunlit, with a fountain or shallow pool nearby. It should have been peaceful, but it wasn't. The ground was shaking beneath me, and I could feel that unmistakable rolling vertigo of an earthquake. Again, I wasn't exactly myself. It felt like I was inside someone else's perspective, feeling their fear as if it were my own. But this time, unlike the first experience, the person didn't die. The moment stretched on. The panic slowly faded into frustration, then irritation, like, please, just let this stop already. That emotional shift was so oddly specific that it stayed with me. The next day, after getting distracted by an argument with my roommate, I was scrolling through the news and saw the top story: a cluster of earthquakes in Istanbul. It had happened in broad daylight there. I did the time conversion, and the moment I had checked in my room lined up almost exactly with the timing of the first quake. That was the second time I felt like I had somehow stepped into someone else's experience from very far away, while in that receptive state between sleeping and waking. So now I'm left wondering whether anyone else has ever experienced something like this. Have you ever been half asleep or lucid dreaming and suddenly found yourself seeing through the eyes of someone far away, especially someone in fear? Not just seeing it, but feeling their emotions as if they were your own? You know, I was probably around 9 years old when this happened, maybe 10. It was sometime in the late 80s, back when summers felt endless and heavy, and nights in our old house could feel like they were holding their breath. I'm in my late 40s now, and I still haven't fully made peace with what I saw that night. I grew up in a little town in Ohio, and we lived in this really old house right near the edge of town. It had been a lot of things before it became a home. People used to say it had once been a workshop, then a stable, and later some kind of tavern before somebody turned it into a residence. And honestly, the place always felt like it remembered every version of itself. Anyway, it was early summer, one of those nights where the heat just sticks to your skin. We didn't have air conditioning, so the windows were cracked open, hoping for even the smallest breeze, but there was nothing. I remember falling asleep feeling hot and uncomfortable. Then, sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up all at once. It wasn't because of a sound. Nobody called my name. Nothing moved. I just suddenly felt aware, like something wanted me awake. I opened my eyes and sat straight up in bed. The first thing I noticed was that the room felt cool. Not just a little cooler, I mean noticeably cold compared to when I'd gone to sleep. That alone felt wrong. And then, I heard a voice. Not out loud. Not with my ears exactly. It was inside my head, clear as anything. I'm here. I shared the room with my older sister, Mara, so of course the first thing I did was look over at her bed. She was completely asleep, didn't stir at all. And then I got this strange feeling, almost like a nudge in my mind telling me, no, keep looking. So I did. My eyes moved slowly down toward the foot of her bed, then past it, toward the dark corner near the closet. And that's when I saw them. 2 red eyes, glowing, just fixed on me from the shadows. I went completely still. And the weird part is, for a second, I wasn't even afraid. I think my brain was trying to make it make sense. I thought maybe it was our dog, Rusty. Maybe he'd wandered into the room, and the light from outside was catching his eyes. Then that voice came again, calm as ever. Look at your sister's bed. So I looked back, and there was Rusty, curled up right at the foot of her bed. That was the moment everything inside me dropped. Because if the dog was there, then whatever was standing by the closet was not him. I yanked the covers over myself so fast, like a blanket could protect me from something I didn't understand. I stayed there, barely breathing, listening. But there was nothing. No footsteps, no growl, No movement at all. Just silence. Thick, unnatural silence. Our parents' room connected to ours through this old doorway because the house had been remodeled so many times over the years. I remember calling for my dad. Once. Then again. Then louder. It felt like my voice was moving through syrup, like time had slowed down in the room. Finally, I heard my mother answer me. But before she came in, I heard something else. A laugh. Soft. Quiet. Definitely not hers. Then the voice said, "Look outside." I don't even know why I listened, but I did. I turned toward the window, and I watched the light from our neighbor's garage go out. Then another house went dark. Then another. One by one, all down the street, the whole town seemed to lose power in this slow, eerie chain. A second later, my mom came into the room and tried the light switch. Click. Nothing. She tried it again. Still nothing. I told her I thought something had been in the room. She barely looked around. She just told me it was a bad dream, that the power must have gone out, and that I needed to calm down. I looked back toward the closet. Whatever had been there was gone. She told me to lie back down and try to sleep, and eventually I did, at least physically. But I never truly rested after that night. Even now, all these years later, I cannot sleep with a closet door open. Not ever. I don't care how silly it sounds. Something was in that room with me. I can't prove it, and I can't explain it, but I know what I felt. I know what I saw. And more than anything, I know it wanted me to know it was there. I've got to tell you about something that happened to me a few years ago that I still can't fully explain. My band and I were driving through Northern California, and on one of our off days, we ended up in San Jose. Somebody suggested we check out the Winchester Mystery House, and honestly, I didn't know a thing about it. To me, it just sounded like one of those famous roadside attractions people visit because they feel like they're supposed to. Before the tour started, we hung around the lobby for a bit. I bought a bottle of water and sat down beneath this portrait of Sarah Winchester. Nothing felt strange at first. It all seemed pretty ordinary. Then I accidentally spilled some water on the table, and in the back of my mind I heard this thought so clearly. Clean it up. Respect the lady of the house. I brushed it off. I figured it was just my conscience talking. But once the tour began, things shifted. Right near the start, there was this man in a red short-sleeved shirt talking to an older couple. Out of nowhere, he turned, looked right at me, and said, "Spirits can move through time." Then he just turned back around like nothing had happened. That got my attention. Our guide came in a moment later, and there was something about her energy I couldn't settle with. Not evil exactly, just odd, uncomfortable, like she knew more than she was letting on. For a while, the tour was just a tour. Strange house, strange history, stained glass, stories about Sarah Winchester and her obsession with patterns and numbers. Then we stepped into Sarah's bedroom, and I don't know how else to say it except that I was suddenly overwhelmed. I started tearing up out of nowhere, and standing beside me was that same man in red. Only later did I learn his name was Will. The older woman from earlier was there too, along with her husband. And here's what made it feel so strange. Throughout the whole tour, people kept drifting around, splitting off from the groups they came in with. But somehow, no matter where I ended up, Will kept appearing near me. In that bedroom, as I was trying not to completely lose it, I thought about my grandmother. She died when I was 13, and I never got to say goodbye to her. The second that memory hit me, that older woman turned toward me with tears in her eyes and gave me this soft, knowing smile. She had an oxygen tube and a little bag at her side, and for one impossible moment, I felt like my grandmother was somehow there with me. Not in a dramatic horror movie way, in a quiet, aching, deeply personal way. Like love had found a crack in time and slipped through. I know how that sounds. I do. But that's what it felt like. Later, we stopped in a room overlooking the garden, and in my head, I started speaking silently to her. I was thinking, I miss you. Look at the man I became. This is my band. This is my life. The whole time she kept looking at me with tears in her eyes, smiling gently. And then the second I stopped, her expression went blank. Just like that, she was a stranger again. Not long after, I heard Will again, but not out loud. That's the part that still bends my mind. It was like hearing words inside my head that weren't mine. Clear as intuition, but sharper, more deliberate. What I heard was something like, "Yes, this is happening, and don't let the tour guide know you can hear me." From then on, I was rattled. A little later, we did that awkward thing, where two people both gesture for the other to go first. I finally stepped ahead, and behind me, out loud this time, he said, "Thanks for the dance." I answered, "You're welcome. It was lovely." And then he disappeared back into the crowd. By then, I was barely holding it together. I was trying to act normal, but inside I was spiraling. I kept asking myself, am I imagining all this? Am I losing it? Then it got stranger. Near a library area, I was standing beside a young woman with glasses when I heard another voice in my head, not mine again, saying something like, "Protect her." A little later I thought, what is happening to me? And a blonde woman behind me laughed out loud at the exact moment I thought it. I answered her silently in my head, "Don't laugh. This is new to me." And she laughed again, like she'd heard me. There was also this moment by the famous door to nowhere. I looked through a pane of glass and caught my reflection, but only half my face was lit. The other half was swallowed in shadow. Standing behind me in the reflection was the older woman's husband. He looked at me with this hard expression and said, out loud, "I hope it was worth it," then walked off. I had no clue what that meant. Then came the part that really shook me. There was a stairway leading one way and a narrow staff passage leading another. The guide specifically told everyone not to use the staff passage. Almost everyone ignored her and went through it anyway. I didn't. I started up the stairs instead. When I looked back, Will was behind me, and now he was holding hands with the blonde woman who'd laughed earlier. We entered another room, and a little blonde boy had just stepped away from a mirror over the mantel. In the reflection, I saw Will and the woman staring back at me, both slowly shaking their heads. Then I heard this disembodied message in my mind. "If you have children, he'll take them from you." That one hit me like ice water. I still don't know what to make of it. Then we reached the kitchen, and that's where the guide suddenly focused on me. She mentioned water heaters, twice, and that stopped me cold, because at the time I worked as a water heater technician. Then she told the group, almost playfully, that she had a friend who liked bringing certain people to the house so they could play a kind of game, a test involving the history of the house. She said she usually won. Most of the group looked confused. I didn't. By the end of the tour, we all gathered in the last room, and the arrangement of people felt strangely ceremonial, almost like everyone had taken their places without being told. The guide said something about Star Wars, and that caught me because I've been thinking about Star Wars imagery all through the tour. Light and dark, tests, spirits, all of it. Then I looked around and realized several people near me were wearing Star Wars shirts or dark clothing, including one of my bandmates. I can't explain why that mattered. It just did, in the moment. It felt like symbolism was happening all around me, and I was the only one reading it. When the tour ended, I hurried into the gift shop, trying to find Will. I spotted him heading toward the exit, and I followed him outside. He was standing near the garden fence, and the blonde woman was walking toward a silver minivan. She called out, "Come on, Will, make it quick." I walked up to him and shook his hand. I asked him, as honestly as I could, I felt something in there. What was that? Can you tell me anything else? He looked at me with this little half smile and said, "Enjoy the basement." Then he got into the van and drove away. And as it pulled off, I realized everyone from that strange final room formation, except the guide, was in that vehicle with him. Family, maybe. Or something else. I still don't know. I went back inside to rejoin my band, and they were all just sitting there, casually waiting for the next tour, like nothing had happened. I was still stunned, still trying to process it, and when the second tour started, our guide was the same woman from before. Only now she seemed lighter, almost smug, like some private little contest had ended in her favor. That whole day has stayed with me. I still remember it clearly. Every room, every look, every word. I think it happened in 2019, maybe 2020. I've only told a couple of people because I know how unbelievable it sounds. But I'm telling you exactly how I lived it. Maybe it was intuition, maybe grief, maybe suggestion, maybe something spiritual. I honestly don't know. What I do know is that I walked into that house as a bored tourist, and I walked out feeling like reality was bigger, stranger, and far more alive than I'd ever allowed myself to believe. I want to tell you about something that happened to me last year, because honestly, I still haven't been able to make sense of it. At the time, there were 4 of us living in the house. Me, my older brother, my cousin Mara, and my aunt. Mara and I shared a bedroom upstairs, so I was used to knowing whether she was there or not. One night, sometime around 2:30, maybe closer to 3 in the morning, I woke up needing to use the bathroom downstairs. The room was dark, and when I looked over at Mara's bed, she wasn't in it. That didn't really alarm me right away, because sometimes she'd fall asleep on the couch in the living room. So I got up, grabbed my phone, and used the screen light to guide myself down the stairs. I was trying to be quiet at first because I didn't want to wake her if she was sleeping downstairs. But when I reached the living room, she wasn't there. That's when I stopped and really started to feel confused. I remember just standing there for a second, thinking, okay, if she's not upstairs and she's not here, then where is she? I started turning on lights and checking everywhere. I looked through every part of the house I could think of. The kitchen, the hallway, the bathroom, every corner I could check. Nothing. No sign of her at all. Then my thoughts started racing. I even wondered if maybe she'd gone outside, but that didn't make sense either. Our neighborhood isn't the kind of place where you just wander out in the middle of the night. So I started knocking on doors. My brother's room was locked. My aunt's room was locked. I called their names over and over, louder and louder. And that's the part that really unsettles me. None of them answered. I wasn't being quiet anymore. I was making enough noise that at least one person should have yelled at me to stop. None of them are especially heavy sleepers, and I know for a fact I was loud. But I got nothing back. No footsteps, no voices, no annoyed, "What are you doing?" Just silence. I kept at it for what felt like forever, probably close to an hour. At some point, I think I stopped looking for Mara and just started making noise because I wanted proof that someone could hear me. I wanted any kind of response. But nothing came. Eventually, I gave up. I went back upstairs, got into bed, and somehow managed to fall asleep. The next morning, everything was completely normal. Everyone was home. Mara was in the kitchen helping make breakfast like it was any other day. So I asked her where she'd gone the night before, and she looked at me like I was the weird one. She said she hadn't gone anywhere, that she'd been asleep downstairs on the couch. I told everyone what had happened, how I'd searched the whole house, how I'd called out for them, how nobody answered me. And they all just kind of brushed it off. They said maybe I hadn't looked carefully enough. Maybe I was half asleep. Maybe I imagined parts of it. And for a while, I tried to accept that. I told myself maybe they were right. Maybe I was groggy and panicked and not thinking clearly. Even though deep down, that explanation never really sat right with me. Then something happened again. Not to me this time, to my mom. And it brought the whole thing back. She searched the whole gym and couldn't find a single person. So she stepped back outside and asked someone passing by where the kids were playing badminton. And the person pointed right at the gym and said, "Inside." My mom went back in, and suddenly the place was full. Kids, noise, activity, everything exactly where it should have been, like it had been that way the whole time. When she told me that, I got chills, because it felt way too close to what happened to me that night. That same feeling of being somewhere familiar, searching, and somehow not finding what should have been right in front of you. I still don't know what to call it. I don't know if it was stress, exhaustion, some kind of strange mental lapse, or something I can't explain. But whatever it was, it didn't feel normal. And the fact that something so similar happened to my mom makes it even harder to shrug off. So yeah, I still think about that night. And I still can't decide what scares me more, if it was real or if it wasn't. I still think about this sometimes, even now. It's been about 20 years, and for some reason, that memory never really left me. I was probably around 11, maybe 12 when it happened. We were living in the Philippines then, and summer had this very particular feeling to it. Everything moved slowly. The afternoons felt endless. The sunlight came in thick and golden through the wooden windows, and you'd hear mangoes dropping onto the roof outside like little warning knocks from nowhere. My older brother Marco and I shared a bedroom on the second floor. The room had this wooden divider in the middle, but during the hotter months, we'd take it down and slide both doors open to let the air move through. We always hoped for that cool breeze from the north. That was the one that made sleeping easier. It would come in through those silver-framed windows and soften the heat a little. Our room faced north and west. On the north side, there were mango trees standing close to the house, maybe 10 feet away, just beyond the kitchen roof below. On the west side, you could see the neighboring houses, low and quiet, especially at sunset when everything turned orange and gray. One night, the divider was down, the doors were open, and the air was completely still. No breeze at all. My brother had already fallen asleep on the bed to the left side of the room, and I was lying awake on the other side, just staring at the ceiling. I remember hearing insects outside, the wood settling now and then, and that kind of silence that feels deeper at night. And then, for no reason I could explain, I woke up. Not because of a loud sound, not because somebody called my name. It was just that strange kind of waking, where your eyes open and you immediately feel like something is wrong, even though everything around you is quiet. So I stayed still for a moment, listening. Nothing. No voices, no barking dogs, no movement from outside. I tried to go back to sleep. I kept staring into the dark, waiting for my eyes to adjust. And that's when I saw them. 2 small red dots outside the northern window. They weren't moving. They were perfectly still, evenly spaced, just suspended there in the darkness like a pair of eyes looking in. I can still remember the way my whole body went cold. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just lay there pretending I hadn't seen anything, because somehow that felt safer. I closed my eyes and tried to force myself back to sleep, but of course I couldn't. I stayed awake for what felt like hours, just waiting for the sky to lighten. When morning finally came and the room started to fill with that pale, early light, I looked again. They were gone. At breakfast, I told my parents what I'd seen. My mom listened, smiling in that calm way she had, and told me it was probably just a reflection from the control switches in their room. There were little red indicator lights on them, and she said maybe with the divider gone and the room opened up, I was seeing those lights reflected in our window from a strange angle. Honestly, it sounded reasonable. Their room was directly across from ours, and the explanation made enough sense that I accepted it. That same week, we went to stay with my grandparents for a few days, which was something we often did. I spent the whole time playing with my cousins, running around outside, getting dusty, staying busy. And little by little, I forgot about the red eyes. Until we came back home. The very first night we were back, it happened again. I woke up the same way. No noise, no reason, just that sudden awareness. And immediately, I remembered what I had seen before. This time, I told myself not to be scared. I told myself it was only the reflection. I even turned my body slowly, pretending I was just shifting in my sleep, and looked toward the window with barely open eyes. 2 red dots. Still, evenly spaced, watching. That scared me enough that I finally got out of bed and went to ask my mother for a glass of warm milk. She got up without complaining, like she always did, and came downstairs with me. While I was drinking, I asked her if she could please turn off the lights on the panel because the reflection was frightening me. She took me back upstairs and showed me the switches in their room. 2 little red lights were glowing. She pointed at one and said, "This one's your father's phone." Then she pointed at the other and said, "And this one's mine." She switched them both off, and the red lights disappeared. Then she told me, very softly, "Go check now." So I looked toward our window, and the red eyes were gone. She kissed my forehead after that, and told me I just had a vivid imagination. She said that kind of imagination would someday become something beautiful. And for a while, I believed her. I really did. After that, a few weeks passed, and I stopped thinking about it. I slept normally again. Whatever fear I had felt started to fade, because in my mind, I had already solved the mystery. Then one night, it happened again. The same sudden waking, the same silence, the same feeling of dread before I even opened my eyes fully. I turned my head toward the northern window, and there they were. The red eyes had come back. But this time, I didn't panic right away. I was older now by a few weeks, braver in that way kids can be when they think they understand something. I turned to look toward my parents' room, expecting to see the little red panel lights glowing again. But when I looked, every single light was off. I work overnights, so most mornings I'm walking home just before sunrise, when everything feels half asleep and a little unreal. A few nights ago, I caught something moving out of the corner of my eye, cutting across the road fast. At first I told myself it was probably a deer. I live in a tiny Midwestern town, and at that hour, you get used to seeing all kinds of wildlife out and about. So I tried not to think too much of it. I'm a single mom, and my little boy, Mason, is 6. On weekends, my mom keeps him for me sometimes so I can catch up on sleep and pick up extra shifts. That night, I was just focused on getting home like always. But after a while, I started hearing this strange shuffling sound behind me. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to make the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I took my earbuds out right away. There's a hotel near the road I walk, and with all the road work happening lately, there have been a lot of out-of-town workers staying there. Maybe that sounds judgmental, but when you're walking home alone in the dark, you don't take chances. I looked around, listening hard, but there was nobody there. No footsteps, no voices, nothing. After a minute, everything went quiet again except for the crickets and frogs, and I told myself I was just being paranoid. But then I turned onto my road, and that's when I heard it. It was this distant sound that almost reminded me of a scream, but not quite. It happened every few seconds, the exact same way, from what sounded like the exact same spot every time. At first I thought maybe it was an animal, like a rabbit caught by a fox or something. That happens around here. But this was too steady, too repeated. Real animals don't sound that precise. I can't explain it any better than that. It just felt wrong. I didn't run. I didn't speed up. I'd heard enough stories growing up to know that if something feels off out there, you don't call attention to yourself. So I just kept walking at the same pace, acting like I didn't hear a thing, even though every instinct in me was screaming to get home. Ever since then, I've been terrified to make that walk. But I don't really have another option. I still work nights, and I still have to get home somehow. Every time I pass those trees now, I feel like something is watching me. And here's why I think whatever it is didn't stay outside. A few mornings later, my mom had Mason with her again so I could rest after work. I got home around 5, sat down in the living room, and turned on the TV to unwind. I had only been there a few minutes when I heard, clear as day, "Mama," coming from my son's bedroom. It was Mason's voice. I froze, but I didn't answer. I knew he wasn't there. I knew he was with my mom. A little later, I heard it again. "Mama." Same voice, same room. I still didn't react. I just sat there and tried to act normal, even though I could feel my chest pounding. Since then, it's happened more than once. Sometimes I'll hear Mason's voice from another room, even when he's sitting right there with me in the living room. The strangest part is that he never reacts. Not once. It's like he doesn't hear it at all. Like I'm the only one it's talking to. Then there's the knocking. No one on the porch. No one by the road. Nothing. I don't know what this is. I don't know why it sounds like my child. And I don't know what I'm supposed to do when something outside starts sounding like it already knows its way inside my home. Hey everyone, watching Paranormal M. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're tuning in from. Thanks for sharing your paranormal experiences with me. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you're the first to catch the newest videos on the channel. Have you been having trouble sleeping lately? Put on the paranormal stories on Paranormal M to help you relax and drift off a little easier. Alright, let's get started. So, when I was really little, maybe 6 or 7, I lived with my mom in this old family house that used to belong to my great-grandmother. You know the kind of house I mean. Creaky floors, 2 quiet hallways, that feeling like the air is holding on to stories. Back then, I had everything. Plushies piled on my bed, little toy sets, and those messy kids' makeup cases with tiny brushes and glittery compacts. And almost every day after school, I'd come home and find my stuff scattered like somebody had gone digging through it. Sometimes things just wouldn't be there anymore. A stuffed bunny, a plastic bracelet, a lipstick toy, gone. But the moment I still remember the clearest happened one afternoon when my mom told me, "Hey, go tell your Uncle Mateo we're leaving with him in the morning. His truck, early." Uncle Mateo lived farther back on the property, closer to the trees, in this smaller little place behind the main house. I was sitting on the floor while she said it, trying to unpack one of my makeup kits. Honestly, it was a disaster. Sponges, brushes, fake blush, little clips, all jumbled together like someone had shaken the whole thing up. So I ran back, told my uncle, and when I came home, I froze. Because my makeup kit, my chaotic, exploded everywhere kit, was perfectly organized. Like, not tidied up a bit. I mean everything placed neatly like it had been sorted by someone who really cared. Brushes lined up, little trays stacked, the tiny mirror wiped clean. It looked intentional. I went straight to my mom and said, "Did you do this?" And she stared at me, confused. And it wasn't just confusion. There was this quick, serious look that crossed her face, like she was deciding whether to tell me something or protect me from it. Then she smiled too brightly and said, "Yes, honey, it was me. I just wanted to mess with you." And I remember accepting it, because what else do you do when you're a kid and your mom says it was her? But that night, things shifted. I used to sleep in the same bed as my mom, big, heavy blankets, the kind that made you feel safe. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up just enough to hear her get out of bed. I didn't open my eyes. I just listened. She padded into the kitchen, and I heard this soft clink, like a dish being set down. Then I heard my mom's voice, low and cautious. "Abuela, was that you?" And then my great-grandmother's voice answered from the dimness, sounding tired and honestly confused. She said she'd been resting. She hadn't been up organizing anything. She hadn't touched any of my things. Then she said something that made my stomach tighten, even as a little kid pretending to sleep. She said, very quietly, like it was a fact she'd been expecting, "They've probably come back. They're back." My mom returned to the bedroom after that, and I stayed still, holding my breath like a kid trying to disappear under the covers. She didn't say anything to me, but I could feel that her whole body had changed, like she was tense in a way I'd never felt before. The next morning, she packed a small bag and told me we were going to stay with my grandma for a bit. "Just a week," she said, casual, like it was no big deal. When we came back, everything was normal again. The house felt calmer. The toys still got messy because I was a kid, but that sharp weirdness faded enough that eventually I let it slip out of my mind. And honestly, a lot of strange things have happened in my life, little moments that make you pause, but I grew up learning how to shrug and keep moving, until my mom told me her side. Not too long ago, years later, she brought it up out of nowhere. She asked, "Do you remember your makeup kit? How it was suddenly organized?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." She said when she was around 6, she lived in that same house with her grandmother, my great-grandmother, and she slept in the exact room my mom and I used to sleep in. Her grandmother had her own room down the hall, and almost every night, my mom said, she'd hear tiny footsteps in her room. Not adult footsteps, not the settling of an old house. She described it like quick little taps across the floorboards, back and forth, like something restless. And then objects started shifting. Clothes would vanish. Little personal things would go missing. Sometimes they'd show up later in places they had no business being. Then one night, she felt something hop onto the bed, like a cat jumping up. She said her whole body went cold. She pulled the blanket over her head, heart thudding, trying to pretend she wasn't there. And from the darkness, a tiny voice spoke to her. It introduced itself, like it wanted to be polite, and asked her, in that thin little voice, not to turn on the light. That part gives me chills every time I repeat it. From then on, she said it became almost routine. They visited her at night. They talked to her. She'd ask who they were, what they wanted, why they kept coming. And they told her they were her friends, that they came because they liked her. At first, it sounds almost childish, like imaginary friends. Except she wasn't imagining the way things moved or the way she could feel them near her. As the nights went on, my mom said she started feeling scared, even when they were being nice. Their voices kept telling her to come with them. They promised her beautiful places, bright colors, toys, things that sounded perfect to a child. And over time, they got bolder. She said she felt their hands on her sometimes, small and strangely soft, like a newborn baby's hands. One night, one of them tugged her hair, playful, like teasing. And that's when she said something inside her just snapped into pure fear. Because teasing can turn into something else. And even as a kid, she knew that. They started insisting she crawl under the bed, over and over. Under the bed. Under the bed. She got so frightened she ran to her grandmother and begged to sleep in her room. She told her, crying, that the duendes, that's what she called them, like goblins, wanted to take her away. Now, my great-grandmother was deeply religious, but she wasn't someone who entertained fantasy. Still, she agreed. She said fine. She'd sleep there with her. That night, my mom said, they came back. And it wasn't friendly anymore. She felt them pulling at her clothes, tugging her like they were trying to drag her toward the edge of the bed, like they were trying to get her down and under. She woke her grandmother, shaking her, whispering, panicking. And before my mom could even fully explain, her grandmother suddenly sat up, turned on the light, and they both heard it. Scrambling sounds, quick and frantic, like little bodies scattering across the floor. My mom was sobbing. She told her everything. The voices, the promises, the requests to go under the bed, the way they touched her, the tiny footsteps every night. And her grandmother, this woman who didn't believe in fantasy, looked at her and said she believed her, because she'd heard them too. She carried my mom to her own room and locked my mom's bedroom with a padlock, like she wasn't taking chances. Like she knew you don't argue with something you don't understand. You shut the door. And early the next morning, before the day really even started, they called people from the church to come to the house. They trusted my great-grandmother. People considered her wise, honest, steady. If she said something was wrong, they listened. When they moved the bed, they found something under it. A hole in the floor. They sealed it with cement, reinforced it with wooden boards, made sure there was no easy way in or out. After that, my mom said, the visits stopped. No more footsteps, no more voices. When she told me all this, I went to my great-grandmother, when she was still alive, and asked her. I didn't even lead with the weird parts. I just asked carefully, is it true there was a hole under the bed? Is it true people came from the church? And she confirmed it. She didn't act dramatic. She didn't try to scare me. She just nodded like it was something that happened, something you survived, something you didn't invite back in by talking too loudly about it. After that, every time I stepped into that old house, I felt it, the heaviness, like the walls remembered, like the air still had secrets tucked into it. My mom told me she worried they'd come back, and that maybe they'd come back for me. And I still don't know what to believe about that. All I know is this. I can't explain how my makeup kit got organized when no one was there to touch it. And I still can't explain all the stuffed animals and toys that disappeared without a trace. But sometimes, when I think about that old house, I swear I can almost hear those tiny footsteps again, just at the edge of remembering, like something pacing where the light can't reach. So, I'm originally from Ireland, but I've been living over in Wales for a while now. And honestly, I'd never been the type to chase stories about ancient giants or any of that. I didn't even really know people claimed they'd found giant skeletons until much later. But I've got this one thing that happened to me that I still can't neatly explain, because I didn't just hear about it. I saw it. It was a few years back, maybe 6 or 8 years ago, when I was home visiting. A mate of mine, Declan, was with me, and we'd just been up at the hill of Tara in County Meath. We'd done the usual wandering around, soaking it in, and right before we left, we stopped by the Stone of Destiny, Leah Fall. If you've ever been there, you'll know what I mean when I say the place has a weight to it. Not in a scary way, more like it's humming, quietly. Anyway, we were heading back toward Dublin, driving along the motorway, just chatting away like normal. I remember passing a cluster of caravans parked up on the grassy verge to my left, just a little roadside setup, nothing dramatic. And then, not long after that, I spotted someone ahead of us crossing the motorway. At first I thought, oh no, Somebody's going to get themselves killed. I eased off a bit, getting ready to brake, because we were moving at motorway speed. But then my brain sort of stalled, because what I was looking at didn't match what I thought I was seeing. The figure was enormous. Not tall guy tall, wrong tall. Like the proportions were human, but scaled up. If I had to guess, I'd say 9 or 10 feet, maybe more, but it's hard to measure something like that when you're driving straight toward it and your mind is trying to catch up. It was maybe a couple 100 meters in front of us, and it was moving unbelievably slowly, like each step had weight in it. Heavy, deliberate. Head bowed. Long, dark hair hanging down. Declan went quiet beside me, and then he said, really sharply, "Watch it. Be careful." And that's the thing. He saw it too, without me prompting him. Same moment, same urgency. As we got closer, I could make out what it was wearing, or what I think it was wearing. Some kind of long, dark garment that hung down near the knees, but it didn't look like a cape. More like a heavy top or coat, and underneath that it was hard to see anything. No clear glimpse of skin, which sounds odd, but that's exactly how it registered. The color didn't even land properly in my head, like my eyes refused to file it away as a normal detail. The daylight was clear. No mist, no rain, nothing that would make you misread shadows. It was just there, crossing, slow as you like, not reacting to us at all. And then it reached the central reservation, the big hedge that splits the carriageways, and it simply vanished. Not walked behind it and we lost sight for a second. Not maybe it ducked. It was like the moment it touched that hedge line, the shape of it stopped existing. 1 second we were both staring at this massive, bowed figure, and the next second there was only the hedge and empty motorway. I remember looking at Declan immediately, because you know when something happens and your first instinct is to check you're not losing your mind? And he looked back at me with the same expression I must have had, wide-eyed, almost annoyed with reality. We pulled the details apart out loud right then, trying to be sensible about it. The height, the hair, the slow movement, the heavy way it crossed. And what freaked me out most was that we described the same features without leading each other. Same picture, same moment, same disappearance. I've gone over it 1,000 times since, and it still sits in my mind like a photograph. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just this quiet, impossible thing that happened on an ordinary drive. And that's it, really. That's what we saw. Both of us. So, I don't really know how to explain this without sounding a little dramatic, but I've got to ask, have you ever had that weird, super specific feeling like someone is touching your toes? Like, actually touching them? Because it's happened to me twice now, and my brain keeps trying to file it under normal human things, but it's not cooperating. The first time was maybe a couple months ago. Middle of the night, pitch dark, I'm dead asleep. And I swear I felt my partner, Evan, shuffle past the foot of the bed like he was headed to the bathroom. You know when someone's trying not to bump into you, so they kind of brush their hand over the blankets as they pass? That's exactly what it felt like, except when his hand passed, it lingered for half a second and gave my feet this gentle little squeeze. It woke me up instantly. So I roll over toward Evan's side, ready to, "You okay?" or whatever. And I kid you not, he is still in the exact same position, totally out cold, not even stirring. I just froze there for a second, staring at him like, no, that can't be right. Then I looked toward the doorway. Our bathroom area is kind of its own little space, like a separate room connected to our bedroom. And there was nothing. No movement, no shadow, no sound, just quiet. I sat there trying to convince myself it was a dream, but I was freaked out enough that I scooted my feet closer to him, like I was tucking them into a safe zone, and I basically clung to his arm. And the whole time, my feet had been under the covers. The entire time. Then the second time happened more recently, like last week. Early morning this time. It was that half asleep, half awake zone where you're not sure if you're dreaming or just barely conscious. And I suddenly felt something grip one of my toes. Not like a blanket shifting, not like a cramp, like fingers. It felt cold and kind of bony, and the grip was almost deliberate, like whatever it was curled around my toe and gently pulled it, just enough to get a reaction out of me. I shot upright so fast my heart was pounding in my throat. And this time there was daylight coming in, so I could actually see the room. I glanced around like a crazy person, checking the floor, the foot of the bed, the doorway. Nothing. Again. And here's the part that keeps messing with me. My feet were still under the covers. So how am I feeling something that clearly feels like fingers, cold, hard, almost like long nails, unless it's literally under the covers with me? While I'm sitting there trying not to spiral, Evan calls out from the bathroom, "Hey, was that you?" Because apparently he heard footsteps in the bathroom area, like someone moving around. But I was in bed, completely still, sitting straight up, staring at nothing. And the layout makes it worse, because my side of the bed is closest to the entrance of that bathroom space. But you can't really see into it unless you actually get up and look. So it's not like I could just glance over and feel reassured. What's throwing me is, I'm not usually someone who feels super vivid physical stuff in my sleep. I've had sleep paralysis before. I've dealt with night terrors off and on. So part of me is like, okay, maybe this is my brain doing that real feeling thing again. But then there's this older memory that pops up and makes me side-eye everything. Years ago, I woke up to what felt like a small hand patting my lower back, like a little kid trying to get my attention. I fully assumed it was my son at the time, because he was little then. But when I turned around, it wasn't him. So now I'm sitting here like, am I just tripping? Is this a mild sleep paralysis thing, or night terrors creeping in through a different door? Or is it something boring and medical, like a nerve thing, your body misfiring signals while you're half asleep? I honestly don't know. I just know it felt real enough both times that it snapped me awake instantly. And it's weirdly specific, always the feet. Always that sense of someone being right there, just out of sight. Tell me I'm not the only one this has happened to. Or tell me what you think it is, because I'm trying really hard not to start sleeping with my feet tucked into a locked safe. So, this is one of those stories I still feel a little weird telling, because even now, I don't have a clean explanation for it. Back then, I was a teenager, maybe 15 turning 16, and I was living with my parents in this cramped apartment tucked deep inside a narrow alley. You know the kind of place where the street is basically a tight corridor between buildings, and there's no real front yard, no breathing room, just doors, concrete, and noise. And honestly, the neighborhood wasn't exactly peaceful. People argued out in the open like it was normal conversation. Dogs barked all night. Someone was always tossing trash somewhere they shouldn't. You'd hear shouting, footsteps, sometimes things breaking, and nobody acted surprised. It was just the vibe. My family wasn't some calm little oasis either. My parents weren't monsters or anything, but they could be intense. Sudden yelling, dramatic accusations over tiny things, that kind of chaotic energy that makes a house feel smaller than it already is. Anyway, here's what happened. My aunt, my mom's older sister, Aunt Nari, gave me a watch as a gift. It wasn't fancy, but it felt special to me. A classic digital one, sturdy and practical. The kind of thing you wear and feel a little more grown up. I wore it for 2 days straight like it was part of my identity. That night, I came into my room around 10ish, took the watch off my left wrist, and set it right on my desk. Not tucked away, not inside a drawer, just placed flat, right beside my textbooks, close enough that if I rolled over in bed, I could still see it from where I was lying. And I remember this clearly. My dad, Mr. Prassard, always doing his last-minute, "Tomorrow you need to do this" speech, came into my room around 10:45 p.m. He stood in the doorway, reminding me about chores and school stuff, and he absolutely saw me put the watch on the desk. I didn't hide it. There was nothing secret about it. I went to bed. Then, at around 1 in the morning, I jolted awake to this sharp, ugly sound. Water splashing hard onto the floor, like a sudden pouring, not a drip. My air conditioner had malfunctioned. It was the middle of summer, the kind of night where the heat sticks to your skin, and of course the one thing keeping the room livable decides to break at the worst possible moment. So I sat up, half panicked, already annoyed, and I glanced at my desk. And my watch was gone. Like, gone. I remember freezing for a second, because my brain tried to do that thing where it assumes you're just sleepy and confused. So I leaned forward, blinking, scanning the desk. Books were there. Pens were there. My notebook. A cup. Everything normal. No watch. And here's the part that makes my stomach tighten even now. My bedroom door had been locked. I flung the blanket off, checked the desk again, checked under the books, swept my hand along the surface like maybe it slid into some invisible crack. Nothing. I checked the floor, under the bed, inside the pillowcases, even between the mattress and the frame, like that makes any sense at 1 in the morning. Then I yelled for my parents. They came in, my mom, Mira, grumpy and confused, and my dad looking irritated until he saw my face. I tried to keep my voice steady while I asked them straight out if either of them had come into my room and moved it. Both of them said no. I kept pressing. I know how that sounds, but I really did. I asked again and again in different ways, like maybe someone would suddenly admit, "Okay, fine, I took it to teach you a lesson," or "I moved it so it wouldn't get wet," or anything. But there was nothing. My dad even looked genuinely baffled and said something like, "Are you sure you didn't put it in your school bag?" I said no, because I was sure. Still, I grabbed my bag and dumped everything out. Books, papers, old wrappers, random pens, like I was trying to prove it to him and to myself at the same time. No watch. So for the next hour, it was this ridiculous scene. Us mopping up water from the busted air conditioner, moving furniture, searching drawers, checking corners, sweeping hands along the desk and shelves, shining phone lights under the bed. My mom started accusing me of misplacing it. My dad looked like he wanted to solve it but didn't know what he was even solving. And the whole time, the door stayed locked. The room hadn't been entered in any normal way. The watch had been right there, visible, obvious, confirmed by another person, and then it just wasn't. Eventually, exhausted and frustrated, we stopped. We said we'd look again in the morning with fresh eyes. But morning didn't help. Days didn't help. Nothing helped. That watch never showed up again. Not in a drawer, not in a pocket, not under the bed, not behind the desk. No broken strap, no battery cover, no trace like it had been stolen or dropped or thrown. It's such a small thing, right? Just a watch. But that's what makes it creepier to me, the casualness of it. Like something reached into a locked room, picked up one ordinary object, and removed it from reality. And no matter how many explanations I try to force onto it, there's always this cold little gap where the answer should be. Because I can handle losing things. What I still can't handle is how cleanly it vanished. So, a few things have happened lately, and I'm not gonna lie, it's left me feeling a little unsettled. I've been trying to make sense of it, but the timing and the way it all connects, it's confusing. And I guess I'm just hoping that saying it out loud will make it feel less weird. So, the first thing that really stands out happened a couple months back. I was in bed, doing my usual thing where I leave the TV on low because it helps me drift off. I remember getting drowsy, like that in-between place where you're not fully asleep, but you're not fully awake either. And then suddenly, I felt this heavy pressure around me, like an actual weight settling over my body. It wasn't just in my head. My mattress dipped, like something was pushing down into it. The pressure was strongest around my lower back, and then it started shaking me, almost like the force was coming from inside that spot. My eyes snapped open immediately, and I was completely frozen. I didn't even want to turn my head. I know that sounds dramatic, but I was so freaked out that I couldn't make myself look around the room. I just lay there, wide awake, staring straight ahead, trying to convince myself it would stop. It did stop. Eventually. And I'm okay now, like I'm not spiraling over that moment every day. But back then, it messed with me for a while. I slept weird for days after, always half expecting it to happen again. Then there was last night, well, technically early this morning. I woke up from this dream that felt way too real. In the dream, I was being told I had 2 weeks left to live. Not in a vague, symbolic way, more like someone was stating it like a fact. It was vivid enough that when I woke up, my chest felt tight, like the fear had followed me out of the dream. And to be fair, I've been carrying a lot lately. Since losing my dad, death has been on my mind in this constant, exhausting way. Like grief rewires your brain and suddenly everything you think about circles back to endings. So I don't know if the dream was my mind processing stuff or something else, but it shook me. This morning, I told my mom, Marina, about it while she was making coffee. And the second I said it, she got this look on her face like, okay, I need to tell you something too. She said that recently, while she was putting some things away, she caught something in the corner of her eye, like a person-shaped figure moving past the living room window. She didn't see a face or anything, just the motion. Enough to make her stop and stare and wonder if someone had walked by outside, even though it didn't make sense. And then she told me about something that happened the day before at her friend's place. Her friend Tessa, who just had a baby. Mom said she'd been in the nursery with the newborn for a while, just sitting quietly, helping out, letting Tessa get a breather. And after about 15 minutes, Tessa suddenly called out from the hallway like, "Did you just walk past the room?" Even though Mom hadn't moved, she was still right there with the baby the entire time. That's the part that keeps sticking with me, how these things seem to cluster. Like we'll have a stretch where multiple odd things happen close together, and then it'll go dead quiet for a while, like nothing ever happened. And then there was this whole period where we both kept hearing whistling. Not just a quick sound, like actual whistling that went on long enough that you'd pause and listen and think, okay, what is that? It happened more than once, and then it just stopped, like it got bored and left. No explanation, no pattern, nothing. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. I'm just being honest that it's strange. And with grief already making everything feel heavier, these moments land harder than they normally would. I guess I just want to understand, are these just stress and sleep and loss playing tricks on us? Or is it normal for weird stuff to happen in waves like that? Because it's the silence afterward that almost freaks me out more, like you're waiting for the next thing to drop. Hey, thanks for letting me share this with you. I'm going to tell it like I'd tell a friend sitting across from me, because that's honestly the only way I know how. So, I lost my dad this spring, early April, and even saying that out loud still feels strange, like my mouth doesn't want to form the words all the way. It's been a heavy season for a lot of people, and grief kind of stacks on top of everything else the world keeps throwing at us. For as long as I can remember, my mom would say to my dad, half joking, half dead serious, "If you ever go before me, you better come back and let me know you're okay." And my dad, with that little confident smile of his, would promise, "I will. I'll find a way." But his death, it wasn't how we expected, not even close. He'd been unwell for a long time, close to a year of appointments where something just kept getting missed, brushed off, delayed. You know that feeling where you're trying to explain, "No, this is not normal," and you can tell you're not being taken seriously? That, over and over. Until one day, it got so bad we called an ambulance because he could barely function. 13 days. That's all he had in the hospital. A brain tumor. And the way it moved through him was cruel, like it stole pieces of him in chunks. The hardest part is how fast it all turned. One minute you're thinking, "Okay, we're here now, they'll help." And the next you're realizing you're standing on the edge of goodbye. My mom stayed with him for his last day and a half, more than 30 hours, barely leaving his side. She was exhausted, but she wouldn't go. She just kept holding his hand, talking to him, telling him everything she needed him to know. Then a chaplain, an older man, soft voice, came into the room and asked my mom if he could offer a blessing. And my mom, she surprised even herself with what came out. She said, "I'm angry with God right now. I prayed and nothing changed." The chaplain didn't flinch. He just nodded like he'd heard that 1,000 times, like anger was also a kind of prayer when you're hurting. He said, "I understand. I can still say a prayer for him, if that's okay." And at that moment, my dad's breathing was awful, erratic, struggling, like his body was fighting a battle it couldn't win. My dad's sister, Aunt Marlene, had just arrived. She stood just outside the doorway, not wanting to crowd the room, but close enough to be there. The chaplain lifted a small cross and rested it gently against my dad's forehead, and he started praying, quiet, steady, like he was smoothing the air. And I swear to you, within seconds, my dad's breathing changed. Not in a "he's getting better" way, in a shift, a settling, like something unclenched. His eyes opened, just for a moment, and he took one last breath while looking straight at my mom. That's the part that still makes my chest tighten, because it felt timed. Like the room had been waiting for something, like he had been waiting for permission, or peace, or maybe just the right second to let go. I'm not saying I understand what happened. I'm just saying it felt strong, spiritual even. Like something you don't have the words to explain, but you know you experienced it. Okay, so that was the first part. Now let me tell you the part that's been sitting in the back of my mind ever since, like a little candle that won't go out. My mom gasped. She actually gasped and said, "Oh my goodness, that is so beautiful. I want one so bad." My dad leaned forward like a kid and went, "That is seriously the coolest thing." A few days later, my dad pulled me aside, all secretive, and was like, "Can you help me find one for your mom? Don't tell her. I want it to be a surprise." So I looked. I searched everywhere I could think of. The fully restored, perfectly working ones were way out of reach, really expensive. But then I found one that looked like it just needed repair. The cage was in great shape. The bird was intact. It just didn't work properly. When you wound it up, the bird would twitch like it wanted to move, but it never sang. It was like it had a memory of being alive, but couldn't quite get there. I told my dad, "This one could be perfect if we fix it. It's basically like a little watch inside, delicate but fixable." So he bought it, and my mom loved it immediately, even though it didn't work. It sat in their house for years, more like a promise than an object. Every so often, my dad would say, "I'm going to get it repaired. I'm going to make it sing." And my mom would roll her eyes and smile like, "Sure you are." But it never happened. Not until a couple months ago. My mom told me she was walking past it one day and had this sudden weird urge to try it again. Not a logical thought, more like a nudge. Like, "Go on, wind it." So she did. And listen, after all those years of barely doing anything, the bird popped up like it had been waiting. It flapped its wings, it turned its head, and it sang, fully, clearly, like it had been repaired by invisible hands. My mom just stood there, staring at it, and then she started crying. Because what do you do with that? After all those years of my dad promising he'd make it work, it decides to work now, when he's gone, when she's missing him the most. And I keep circling back to that promise he made, the one he made jokingly, but also not joking. "I'll come back and let you know I'm okay." So was it just coincidence? Some stuck gear finally loosening at random? Maybe. But it's hard not to wonder, especially after watching him open his eyes at the exact moment my mom needed that last look. If this was his way of keeping his word in the only way he could. Not the way we pictured, but a way. And honestly, I hope it was. Because if love can leave messages, small ones, gentle ones, wrapped in feathers and brass and a song, then I'd like to believe he found his way back to say, "I'm here. I'm okay. I'm still with you." So, this year, I did something new. I built my very first ofrenda for Dia de los Muertos. Just a small one, nothing fancy. A few photos, a candle, some marigold-looking flowers I grabbed at the store, and little offerings for a couple of our grandparents, Abuela Rosa and Grandpa Mateo. Honestly, the biggest reason I did it was for my toddler, Luisa. She's at that age where she asks a million questions, and I wanted her to know the names and faces of the people who loved our family before she ever got here. I thought it would be sweet, grounding, a way to keep them close. But ever since then, I don't know, things have felt a little strange around the house. Not like full-on horror movie strange, just weird enough to make you pause and go, "Wait, what was that?" A few days ago, I was in our bedroom rocking my 3-month-old, Nico. It was one of those quiet moments where the whole house feels like it's holding its breath. Luisa was stretched out on my bed with her tablet, totally absorbed, and I was half scrolling my phone while rocking the baby, basically running on autopilot. Our room is close to the laundry area, and that little hallway connects straight to the garage door. You have to pass through the laundry room to get into the garage, so we hear everything. The washer, the dryer, footsteps, anything. And I swear I heard the garage door open. Not just a little creak, the full sound. The click, the lift, the heavy roll. Immediately both dogs, Pepper and Churro, jumped up and sprinted into the bedroom like, "Oh, he's home!" They only do that for my husband, so I called out, "Eli, that you?" No reply. No footsteps, no keys, nothing. I sat there for a few seconds, frozen, because you know that feeling, when you're expecting someone to appear any second. And then my brain kicked in like, "Okay, go check. Right now." So I stood up, still holding Nico, and walked to the laundry room fully expecting to find my husband standing there, or, honestly, anyone. But there was nobody. Not in the laundry room, not by the garage door. I even opened the door and looked into the garage because I thought maybe he'd come in and stepped back out for something. Empty. Just the garage, quiet, still. And I stood there for a second, staring, trying to convince myself I imagined it. Like, maybe it was a neighbor's car door. Maybe the baby monitor crackled. Maybe I'm just tired. Moms are always tired, right? I shook it off. But then today happened. Today I was deep cleaning the bathroom, one of those ambitious, I'm going to get my life together cleaning sprees you start and immediately regret. I had Luisa darting in and out, grabbing everything she wasn't supposed to touch, and Nico needing to be held every 5 minutes. Total chaos. At one point, Luisa started digging into my makeup like it was treasure. So I decided, okay, we're done in here. I scooped up both kids, took them out to the living room, and closed the bathroom door behind me so I could come back later and finish once Eli got home. And I didn't even check whether Pepper and Churro followed us out because I was just juggling everything. Baby, toddler, bottles, wipes, the whole circus. I sat down on the couch to feed Nico, and that's when I heard it, scratching at the bedroom door. That specific scratch, scratch, scratch that means, hey, I'm trapped, let me out. So I told myself, okay, 10 minutes. Feed the baby, then go let the dog out. Luisa was on the floor by my feet, reading books, mostly flipping pages and narrating in toddler language. Nico was eating, getting sleepy, his little eyelids fluttering. About 10 minutes later, he falls asleep mid-feed, so I get up and walk him to the nursery to lay him down. And both dogs follow me. Both. Pepper and Churro. I stopped in the hallway like, wait, because I was sure one of them was stuck in the bedroom scratching at the door. And there was no way Luisa let them out. She can't open doors yet. She can barely open a fruit snack. So I walked straight to my bedroom door. It was still closed. Fully shut. Not cracked. Not swinging. Shut. And I just stood there staring at it, with my stomach doing that slow little drop, like my body understood something before my brain wanted to admit it. Because if the dog was scratching to get out, and the door never opened, then how did both dogs end up in the hallway behind me? I checked the door anyway. I turned the knob, opened it. Nothing inside. No dog. No signs of anything. Just the room, like it always is. And I know how this sounds. I do. I keep trying to talk myself out of it. Maybe the scratching came from somewhere else. Maybe it was the vent. Maybe it was the neighbor's dog somehow echoing. Maybe I'm sleep deprived and my brain is filling in blanks. But it felt so real. Both times. The garage door. The scratching. The certainty of it. And there have been other little things too. Small enough that I can brush them off, but frequent enough that I've started paying attention. Which is the part that gets me. Because the ofrenda was supposed to be about remembering, about love, about keeping family stories alive. And now I'm sitting here wondering if something heard me when I said, "Come close." Okay, so I need to tell you what's been happening because I'm honestly at the point where I don't know if I'm being overdramatic or if something in this place is genuinely wrong. First, there are these tiny little pinholes all over my apartment, like everywhere. Along the baseboards, near the closet door, even sprinkled along the wall by my kitchen light. They're so small you'd miss them if you weren't looking, but once you notice one, you start seeing them non-stop. And I've lived in apartments before. This isn't normal wear and tear. It looks like someone took a needle and just kept going. And then there's the sound. It's this thin electronic whine, like a high, steady hum mixed with a faint buzzing. It comes and goes, but it never really stops. I've turned off every device I own, Unplugged everything, even flipped breakers, and it still shows up. I'll stand in the middle of the living room holding my breath, trying to pinpoint it, and it's like it shifts the moment I move, like it knows. But the part that's messing with me the most is how my body feels in here. My skin gets this prickly, hot sensation, almost like I'm too close to something that's radiating heat, except there's nothing there. Sometimes it's my arms, sometimes my neck, sometimes my legs under a blanket like the fabric isn't even blocking it. It's not constant, but it happens enough that I can't stop anticipating it. And listen, this is the detail that makes me sound ridiculous, but it happened. I set a strip of aluminum foil over the top of my air purifier. The purifier wasn't even running. It was off. But a little while later, I came back and the foil looked warped, like it had softened, almost melted in spots. I just stood there staring at it, trying to make sense of it, because how does foil do that on something that isn't hot? Then there's this other thing. I don't even know how to describe it without sounding like I'm making it up. Sometimes it feels like there's something thin moving through the air, like an invisible filament, like a thread you can't see but can feel when it brushes you. I've waved my hands around like an idiot trying to catch it. I've tried scissors. I've tried a kitchen knife. Nothing. It doesn't cut. It doesn't snag. It just slips away. And every so often I'll get these tiny scratches, little shallow cuts on my forearm or near my ankle, and I don't remember doing anything that would cause them. By the windows and doors, the air looks strange too, like it's shimmering, like that heat haze effect you see above asphalt in summer. But it's inside, and it makes me feel nauseous when I stare at it too long. And the whole apartment, this is the weirdest part, feels like it's subtly vibrating. Not like a big shake, not like an earthquake, just a constant, faint tremor that makes you second-guess your own senses. Even my bed feels wrong. I'll lie down and it's like the mattress shifts under me. Not a normal settling, but like it's gently sliding or adjusting when I'm not moving. I've woken up convinced the frame moved a fraction of an inch. I know how that sounds. I do. And then, sometimes, I swear I hear my own phone, like my voice, or a snippet of music, faintly echoed, coming from the vent above the bathroom. Not clearly enough to prove it, but enough that it makes my stomach drop, like the building itself is replaying me back to me. There's also this steady, low vibration that shows up at night, almost like a distant motor running. I've gone from room to room trying to find what's causing it, pressing my ear to walls, putting my palm against the floor, standing perfectly still. It's like it's baked into the place. I can't sleep properly. I'm jumpy. I'm exhausted. And when I've tried to talk about it, people look at me like I'm exaggerating or spiraling, like it's all in my head. Maybe it is. I don't know. That's the part that scares me most, that I don't know what's real anymore, and I don't know what to do with it. I just needed to say it out loud to someone, because I feel trapped in my own space, and I'm so tired of pretending it's fine when it's not. So, let me tell you something that's been sitting heavy in my mind. About 5 or 6 months ago, my dad and I took this trip out to a small village, one of those places where the roads get quieter the farther you go, and the air smells like dust, grass, and animals. We were there because of this woman people kept whispering about. A fortune teller, the kind everyone talks about like she's half myth, half neighbor. When we got there, we immediately saw the house. It didn't look special from the outside, just a regular home, but in front of it, a crowd. People gathered like they were waiting for a concert. Some were locals, some looked like they'd traveled from other towns, and yeah, even a couple of foreigners mixed in. Behind the house, I noticed a backyard with cows and a few other animals wandering around, like the whole place was just living its normal life while all of us stood there holding our breath. We waited a long time, nearly 2 hours. I remember it being midweek, maybe a Tuesday, maybe a Wednesday, and someone in line casually mentioned she doesn't do readings on Mondays or Saturdays. No explanation, just, those days are closed, like it was a rule of nature. Eventually, it was our turn. We stepped inside, and the house felt dim and still, quiet in a way that makes you lower your voice without thinking. We sat down, and she looked at us like she already knew why we were there. She smiled, said something simple like, "Come in, you're welcome," and then she reached for this old book. The pages were packed with strange writing, symbols, lines, things I couldn't make sense of. She opened it like it wasn't a book at all, more like a door. And then she started talking. At first, it was broad, the way you'd expect. But then she looked straight at me and said, softly but clearly, "You have a long road ahead. You're going away, far away, outside this country." My stomach dropped because that wasn't some random guess. I already knew I was planning to go to Europe in about 8 or 9 months. I hadn't been announcing it to everyone. It was real, it was in motion, and hearing it from her mouth made it feel exposed. But she wasn't done, not even close. She tilted her head a little and said, "There's a girl in your life, and I don't like the direction that connection is taking. You've promised her you'll take her with you. Take her to Europe." And I swear to you, my whole body went cold. Because yes, that was true. And the worst part? My dad was sitting right there beside me. And I had never said a word about that promise. Not to him, not to anyone. It was one of those private things you keep tucked away, like it's safer if it stays unspoken. I didn't even know how to react. I just sat there silent, staring at her, feeling like my thoughts had been picked up and read aloud. Then she said, "You'll be staying with family there, won't you? Relatives." Again, true. Completely true. At that point, I wasn't even listening like a curious visitor anymore. I was listening like someone trying to figure out how they're being watched. She kept going, tossing out details about my life, little things, big things, and it kept landing, one after another. No hesitation, no fishing for clues, just accuracy. After we left, I asked around because I couldn't stop thinking about it. Some villagers told me, really casually, that she speaks with spirits, like it was normal, like they were talking about someone who keeps chickens. Tell her what she needs to know. And here's the part that's messing with me now. In the present, the girl she warned me about, let's call her Mira, we've been fighting lately. Not just small arguments, bad days, heavy ones. The kind where you start wondering if you even recognize the relationship anymore. And every time it gets tense, my mind snaps back to that moment in the village, to that woman's voice, like she planted a sentence inside me, and it's been echoing ever since. She said it months ago, and now it's happening. I keep replaying it like maybe I missed something, like maybe there's a logical explanation hiding in plain sight. But I can't wrap my head around it. I really can't. So I'm asking you honestly, have you ever experienced something like this? Or heard a story that felt this impossible and yet this real? Because I'm sitting here trying to understand how someone could know things I never said out loud. And I don't even know where to start. So, this happened about 8 or 9 years ago, back when I was a kid, living in this old apartment block that always felt a little off. You know the kind of place. Flickering hallway lights, elevators that groan like they're exhausted, neighbors who swear they heard footsteps when nobody was there. Weird things happened often enough that I stopped being surprised by them. But this one still sits in the back of my mind. One night, I had this dream that felt too real. In the dream, I woke up in my bed like I normally would, half asleep, not even scared, just that groggy, why am I awake feeling. I turned my head toward the little digital alarm clock on my nightstand and saw the time. 4:12 a.m. It didn't feel strange. Back then, I'd wake up randomly all the time. So I started to roll over and force myself back to sleep. And then I noticed someone was standing beside my bed. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the dark, but it wasn't like a normal shadow. It was more like the outline of a kid-shaped emptiness, like the room had been cut out in that shape. Not black exactly, just missing. I still think of him as the hollow boy, because shadow doesn't really cover what it was. He spoke to me, not loudly, more like his voice was already inside the room, like it had nowhere else to come from. I can't remember most of what he said, only that he talked for a long time, and I answered like it was completely normal. That's the part that messes with me the most. I wasn't terrified. I was just listening. Over and over, he kept asking me for help. Can you help me? Will you help me? I really need you to help me. And every time I asked how, he'd avoid it. Like he couldn't say it yet. Like he was building up to something. Eventually, that heavy sleepiness started pulling me under again. I remember blinking slowly, feeling myself drift, and I think I even mumbled something like, okay, what do you want? That's when he finally said it. He asked me, really quietly, like he was afraid I'd refuse, if I could help him find his mom. And honestly, I just wanted the moment to end. I wanted to stop feeling strange and go back to sleep. So I said yes. I didn't think. I didn't ask questions. I just agreed, like it was some small favor I could do later. The second I said it, he vanished. No footsteps, no fade. He was just gone, and the room felt normal again. I let out this long breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, rolled over, and closed my eyes. And then I snapped awake instantly, like someone flicked a switch. I was really awake this time. My heart was thumping, my mouth dry, the room exactly the way it should be. I sat up fast and looked at the clock. 4:12 a.m. The same exact time as in the dream. I remember just staring at it, trying to talk myself out of it. Like, okay, weird coincidence, whatever. I was a kid. I didn't have the words for how unsettling that felt, so I buried it. I went back to sleep eventually, and in the years after that, I stopped thinking about it. Life moved on. We moved out of that apartment complex. Different neighborhood, different routines, different everything. The memory dulled like old bruises do. Still there if you press on them, but not something you notice every day. Until a few months ago. I was cleaning out my desk, just doing that mindless sorting you do when you're trying to feel organized. I lifted a stack of papers, and there it was, a small shard of glass, almost triangular, dark enough that it looked black unless the light hit it at the right angle. It wasn't mixed in with anything. It wasn't in an envelope. It was just waiting under the papers like it had always belonged there. I picked it up without thinking, and the moment my fingers touched it, my stomach dropped. That's the only way I can describe it, like my body reacted before my mind did. My skin went cold. My throat tightened. I felt suddenly nauseous, like something about that shard was wrong. Not sharp wrong. Not careful, you'll cut yourself wrong. More like, don't touch this wrong. And with that wave of unease came the memory. So fast, it was like getting hit. The hollow boy beside my bed, the long conversation I can't fully remember, and my sleepy promise. Yeah, I'll help you. It felt like the shard had tugged that memory out of wherever it had been buried. Ever since that day, I've had this strange pressure in the back of my thoughts. Whenever I remember the hollow boy, I get this sudden urgency, like I'm late for something, like I'm running out of time, like I agreed to meet someone somewhere and I can't remember where. And the worst part is, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know how to find his mom. I don't know what that meant. I don't know if it was just a dream and my brain is stitching things together because the glass freaked me out. But sometimes I catch myself looking at that shard, sitting in a little box now because I can't bring myself to throw it away. And I get this chill that feels almost directed, like someone is trying to pull my attention toward it, like the promise is still sitting there, unfinished. And I don't know why, but I can't shake the feeling that whatever it is, it doesn't want to wait much longer. So, this happened about a couple years back, and I still don't really know what to do with it, except tell it exactly the way it felt. My partner at the time had this old black lab named Roxy. Sweetest soul. She was one of those dogs who made a whole performance out of standing up. Lots of huffing, puffing, dramatic little sighs like she'd been personally wronged by gravity. Total character. And she had this thing. She loved when you scratched the underside of her neck. You know that thick fur mixed with those soft, droopy little skin folds? I'd rub right there, and she'd lean into it like, yes, that's the spot. Keep going. Honestly, it was weirdly comforting for me too. Like a simple little ritual. When she passed, it wrecked everyone. The house felt hollow. Even their other dog, a super upbeat pit bull mix named Juno, got noticeably down after that. Stopped bouncing around, slept more, just quiet. It was heartbreaking. Less than a month later, my partner's parents went out of town and asked us to stay over and look after Juno. We figured she probably shouldn't be alone in that house so soon after losing Roxy, so we made a weekend of it. First night there, Friday, really late, like around 1 a.m. We're on the couch in the living room, just talking, half laughing, half zoning out. At some point, we start talking about Roxy and whether getting another dog someday would help or just feel wrong. And we both got that tight feeling in the throat. Not full-on crying, but you know when you're right on the edge and you can hear it in your own voice? That. Then, out of nowhere, from the dining room, we hear this unmistakable sound. Jingle, jingle. A dog collar. We both froze, looked at each other like, no way. My partner starts to say, did you just hear? And then it happens again. Jingle. And here's the thing. Juno is right in front of us, in her bed, asleep. You can literally see her collar resting against her chest, not moving at all. So I stand up, and the house is dark in that way where the dark feels thick, like it's holding its breath. The kitchen opens into the dining room, and I'm peering out there, squinting, heart thumping. And I don't even think. I just call out softly, like it's normal. Roxy? And I hear another little collar sound, closer this time. Jingle. I say her name again, quieter. Roxy. And I swear to you, I could sense something moving in the darkness. Not like a shadow you see clearly, more like a subtle shift, like the darkness had a shape inside it. Almost like those optical illusions where you can only see the image if you stop staring directly at it. It was low to the ground, long-bodied, and it moved with this familiar wobble, this slight limp sway with each step, exactly the way Roxy used to shuffle around when she was old. My entire body went cold hot, cold hot. Without thinking, I crouched down and opened my arms the way I used to greet her, like muscle memory took over. And whatever that presence was, it came right up to me. And then, this is the part that still makes my skin prickle. I felt a head settle into my hands. Not a breeze, not my imagination brushing against itself. I felt weight, warmth. I felt her neck, those soft folds, the thick fur, except it felt different now. Smoother, like it had been brushed forever. Silky in a way her coat never was in old age. It was Roxy, but young, healthy, almost glowing. Not literally glowing like a cartoon, but like she had this soft golden light to her, like the color of sunrise. Her fur looked darker at the base, but kissed with this warm, honey blonde sheen. And behind her, this is going to sound ridiculous, there were these faint little rays, like gentle beams of light fanning out, the way movies show something holy arriving. It was still her, the same eyes, the same presence, just restored. And then it was gone, as quickly as it came. I stood up and it hit me all at once. I didn't slowly tear up. I didn't build into it. It was like a dam just shattered in my face. Instant, uncontrollable crying. My partner staring at me, freaked out because she'd never seen me cry like that. Not even close. And she hadn't felt what I felt. She just heard the jingling and saw me disappear into the dark and come back looking like I'd seen a ghost. It took me a while to even speak. I had to catch my breath, wipe my face, get my voice back. And then I told her everything, and the whole time I'm talking, I'm getting goosebumps, like my body is trying to process something it doesn't have a category for. The next day she told me, after seeing your face, I have no choice but to believe you. Because I wasn't trying to convince her. I wasn't performing. I was shaken, like I'd been touched by something real. And even now, when I tell this story, I still get that choke in my throat. Still get those full body chills. Maybe my mind filled in parts because I wanted it so badly. Maybe grief does strange things in quiet houses at night. But I know this. We both heard that caller. And I know, down to my bones, that I held Roxy's head and rubbed her neck one more time. And ever since then, I catch myself looking a little longer into dark rooms, just in case there's something there that you can only see if you stop staring straight at it. So my family has this old cottage out in the Slovak countryside. Well, near there, technically. It's been passed down for ages, the kind of place with uneven floorboards and walls that have heard 100 years of conversations. We go back every summer, like a tradition you don't even question. But here's the thing. Once it gets dark, the whole mood changes. In the daytime, it's cheerful. Sun on the yard, the smell of wood and grass, someone always clanking around with tools. Then night comes, and suddenly nobody wants to step outside. My Aunt Mila won't even take the trash out after sunset. My cousin Roman laughs about it, but even he does that I'm totally not scared speed walk when he has to cross the yard. There's an old story tied to the land. The cottage sits close to a hill covered in forest, and at the bottom, there's a narrow stream. Locals have this belief that during the plague, back when people didn't have time for proper burials, bodies were taken up toward that hill and left there, like the forest became an unmarked cemetery. I'd heard it growing up, but honestly, I never paid it much attention. Stories are stories, right? Then one summer, we decided to renovate. It was one of those long, dusty, satisfying days. Painting, hauling boards, putting up a new kitchen wall. By evening, the kitchen and living room looked almost new. The rest of my family headed to the smaller wash house across the yard to shower, and it ended up just being me and my mom, Lenka, alone in the cottage. We sat down on the couch, exhausted in that good way, looking around at everything we'd done. And that's when we heard it. A voice, thin and crackly, like it was fighting through static. Like a radio with bad reception, except we don't have a radio there. It came from nowhere, and it was so clear it turned my stomach cold. One word. Zdravo. At first, my brain didn't even grab onto it. I remember blinking and looking at my mom like, "Did you hear that?" And she was already staring back at me with the same exact face. It wasn't yelling. It wasn't whispering either. It was just spoken. Right into the room, like someone had stepped between us for a second and said it. We sat there frozen, replaying it out loud to each other. Did it say? Yes, it said it. And it sounded like an old speaker? Exactly. And the second we fully agreed we'd heard the same thing, knock, knock, knock. 3 knocks on the front door. Not a polite little tap. Not a, "Hey, maybe someone's back early." It was firm, measured. Like whoever, or whatever, was on the other side knew we were listening. My mom didn't move. I didn't move. We just sat there, barely breathing. Because in my family there's this rule, and everyone treats it like you treat fire. You don't argue with it, you just respect it. If something knocks at night, especially if it knocks like that, you don't open the door. You don't invite anything in. So we stayed right where we were, on that couch, pretending we were calm while we definitely weren't. My mom started talking quietly, almost like she was trying to fill the space so it couldn't fill itself. I nodded along, even though I couldn't tell you what she said. All I could hear was that strange voice in my head, and the knock echoing behind it. When the others finally came back, laughing and dripping water everywhere like normal life still existed, I swear the air got lighter the moment they walked in. We told them what happened. But then my parents exchanged this look, the kind that says, "Yeah, we know." Because apparently, it wasn't new. My dad admitted that years ago, they'd heard knocking too. Only that time, they were all gathered in the wash house with a bunch of relatives. Someone went and opened the door, expecting a neighbor or one of the kids messing around. Nobody was there. No footsteps. No silhouette. Just empty night and the yard staring back. And once you hear that, you start noticing other things. Like the time I was alone in the cottage, lying in the bedroom reading. Completely peaceful. No wind, no drama. And I watched the door start to open, slowly, steadily, like an invisible hand was pushing it. There was a bag on the floor beside the door, and the door kept pressing into it hard enough that the bag crumpled and slid. I told myself it was the old house settling, or maybe the floor was slanted. Later we checked. The floor slopes the other way. If anything, that door should drift shut, not creep open like it had somewhere to be. And then there are the voices. This part is the worst because it's so human. Sometimes my sister and I sleep in the living room, and late at night we'll hear murmuring from the veranda. Not clear words, nothing you can repeat. Just low mumbling, like a conversation happening right outside the glass. Quiet enough that you strain to catch it, but loud enough that you cannot pretend it's just your imagination. And the strangest part? It doesn't happen every night. Most nights are perfectly normal. Crickets, creaky pipes, the usual cottage sounds. But then you get that one night. The strange day. You can feel it long before anything even happens. The air feels heavier. The shadows look too still. Everyone gets weird and jumpy without meaning to. You'll catch yourself thinking, I really don't want to step outside right now, even if you don't have a reason you can explain. It's like the cottage has moods. Like some days it's just an old family home, and some days it remembers everything that came before us. And even after all that, after the voice, the knocks, the door, the mumbling, I still love going back. It's odd, yeah. Unsettling sometimes, sure. But it's also familiar. It's ours. And maybe this is going to sound strange, but none of it has ever felt like it wanted to hurt us. Mostly, it feels like the cottage is just alive in its own way. Like it's reminding you, you're not the first people to sit in this room. You won't be the last. And some things don't leave just because time passes. Hey, thanks for listening. I've been turning this over in my head for months, and I just need to say it out loud to someone who isn't in the middle of it with me. So, my wife, Marisol, recently inherited this house that used to belong to her grandparents. And I know, on paper that sounds like a blessing. A big house, in a really nice part of the city. The kind of place most people would be thrilled to get a shot at. But here's the truth of where we're at. We're renting right now, and financially, we're okay, but barely. We're not drowning, but we're not breathing easy either. We pay our bills, we stay responsible, we do what we're supposed to do. But it's that exhausting kind of fine, where one surprise expense can knock you sideways. We've tried to save for a down payment, genuinely tried, and every time we get close, it's like the finish line moves. Prices go up, requirements change, and suddenly, what we saved isn't enough again. That's how the idea of moving into the inherited house even came up. Now, this house has been for sale forever, more than a decade, with almost no real interest. Eventually, Marisol's family started renting it out instead, and that's where the stories started piling up. Every tenant says the same kind of thing, even if they say it differently. The place is heavy. People feel drained. Arguments happen more. Bad luck follows them. And it's not just spooky, I heard a noise stuff. It's that slow, creeping sense that life starts unraveling when you're there. And the reason people talk like that is because of what happened in the house years ago. About 30-ish years back, give or take, Marisol's aunt, Renata, died by suicide in an upstairs bathroom. From what I understand, it was a gun. I don't know every detail because the family doesn't talk about it much, and I don't push. It's too raw, even all this time later. What I do know is, she was pregnant. That part always hits me hardest. It's one of those facts that just sits in your chest like a stone. Back then, Marisol's grandparents lived there with their 2 daughters. The upstairs bedroom shared that bathroom, the bathroom where it happened. Afterward, everyone tried to keep living like normal people do after something unthinkable. But you can't erase that kind of moment from a space. You just can't. Her grandparents stayed in the house for years after. Her grandfather, Hector, was in his late 80s when he fell down the stairs. People sometimes whisper about that, like the house pushed him. I don't know. I'm not trying to be dramatic. The man was old. Falls happen. But he died not long after that, and when you stack it on top of everything else, it starts to feel like a pattern whether you believe in that stuff or not. After he passed, her grandmother couldn't handle being alone in such a huge place, so the family moved her into a smaller rental. She died a couple of years later. Then the house sat empty for a while. Later, Marisol's mom, Lydia, moved in after her divorce. She lived there for a few years with a partner at the time, and while he didn't pass away inside the house, he did die during the period they were living there. And Lydia, she went through a string of awful things. The one people always mention is that she lost vision in one eye after a corrective eye procedure went wrong. Again, logically, I know complications happen. Life can be cruel anywhere. But the timing, the string of events, the way it all clusters around that house, it messes with your head. This year, 2 different families rented it at different times. One of them was a friend of mine, Tessa, who moved in with her daughter, Bree. She's in her early 20s. We're close, so when they moved out, I asked Bree straight up, like, be honest, should we move in? She said, no, don't. And she wasn't being theatrical about it. She wasn't claiming she saw ghosts in the hallway or anything like that. She just said the vibe was wrong, that the place felt like it was pressing down on them, that she always felt tired, always felt tense, even on good days. And she said, Nothing huge happened to me, but I swear something there wants you to feel miserable. I laughed a little, because what do you do with that? But my stomach dropped at the same time, because here's the part that's eating me alive. Marisol wants us to move into it. Not because she's ignoring the stories, she's heard them too, but because we're stuck. We can't afford to buy right now. We can't seem to sell that house, and living there would solve a massive problem for us. We'd finally have stability, space, and we wouldn't be bleeding money into rent every month. And my kids are the center of all of it. We've got 2 daughters, Nina, who's 16, and Sophie, who's 12. They're at such sensitive ages, you know? They need steadiness. They need peace. And the thought of moving them into a place that people describe as draining makes my chest tighten. Even if it's all nonsense, even if it's just stories that snowballed over time, what if it isn't? What if we move in and things start falling apart? What if I look back and realize I ignored my own gut because I was scared about money? I even talked to someone, this spiritual guy, a sort of medium, Armand. I didn't tell many people that because it sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud. But I did. He told me something like, if you bring light into the house, keep curtains open, let the sun in, don't let anger settle, keep the mood clean, you'll be okay. And then he said something that stuck with me. Some places get marked, not cursed like movies, just marked. And I don't know what to do with that. I'm in my mid-40s. I feel that pressure, that quiet shame sometimes, like I'm supposed to have this solved by now. Like I'm supposed to have a home that's ours, a plan, a foundation. But I also feel this responsibility to protect my family, even from things I can't prove. So that's where I'm standing. One path solves our biggest practical problem, and the other path feels safer emotionally, but keeps us struggling financially. And I keep asking myself the same thing over and over. Am I being cautious? Or am I being cowardly? Because I don't want to make the wrong choice and pay for it with my wife's peace, my daughter's happiness, or our family's sense of safety. So, I don't usually jump straight to ghost, right? I'm the kind of person who tries to explain everything away first. Drafts, dodgy hinges, my own imagination running wild before breakfast. But this one morning, this one made it really hard. I live in a small market town in northern England, the kind with uneven cobbles and buildings that look like they've been leaning on each other for centuries. On weekends, I do a quick cleaning shift at this pub. Just me, early morning, usually between about 7 and 9. It's always empty, quiet, still. And it's old, like 1600s old. Dark wooden beams, creaky floorboards, heavy oak panels. One of those places that feels like it's been absorbing stories for hundreds of years. Locals swear it's haunted, of course. I always roll my eyes and keep wiping tables. I'd only been working there a few months, but I'd gotten used to its moods. You know what I mean? Some places just have a presence. Most mornings it's fine, just chilly and sleepy. But this was the first weekend after the Christmas decorations went up. And I walked in and immediately thought, oh, everything feels different. I started my usual routine. Toilets first, then sweeping around the bar and the snug, then finishing up in the big room at the back. That back room is the one everyone talks about. Apparently, during the Civil War, it was used for trials. Some say a local magistrate held hearings there for captured royalists. People love that detail. They always lower their voice when they tell you, like the walls might still be listening. Anyway, I went back there with the broom and the air just didn't sit right. It wasn't dramatic at first, just a low-level unease, like you'd stepped into a conversation you weren't meant to overhear. Then I noticed the kitchen door. It was slightly open, just a couple of inches, And it shouldn't have been. It has one of those mechanisms that pulls it shut every time. I told myself, maybe someone didn't pull it closed all the way, or maybe a draft, even though the place was shut up. I went into the kitchen, filled my bucket, and when I came back out, I pressed the door until it latched properly. Click. Nice and secure. I tried to shake it off and got on with mopping the bar area. Still, I kept feeling watched. Not like someone's about to jump out, more like that prickly sensation on the back of your neck when you're alone, but your body doesn't believe you're alone. Then it was time to mop the back room. Fresh water, new mop, back I went. And the moment I stepped into that room, I felt it. Like the temperature dropped a notch and the air thickened. The kind of cold that doesn't feel natural, like it's not coming from the windows or the floor, but from somewhere in the room itself. And the kitchen door? Open again. Same amount, just a sliver, like it was politely refusing to stay shut. I stood there staring at it for a second, mop dripping into the bucket, and I remember whispering something stupid like, "Seriously?" As if a draft was being cheeky with me. I started mopping fast, because suddenly all I wanted was to finish and leave. And while I was moving the mop back and forth, I kept getting this heavy feeling from the corner near the old fireplace, like that was where the room's attention was coming from. Like someone was stood there, silent, just present. 5 minutes in, the door shifted. Not slammed, not flung open. And then the Christmas lights strung along the walls did something I still can't comfortably explain. They didn't just flicker. They rippled. Like a wave ran through them. One smooth undulation that traveled all the way around the room, from my side to the far wall. Like the lights were reacting to something passing by. I actually laughed. This short, nervous little laugh. And went, okay, wind. Has to be wind, even though, deep down, I already knew it wasn't. I marched over, shut the door firmly, and listened for the latch. Click. I even gave it a small tug to make sure it was caught. Less than a minute later, I heard footsteps. Not creaks, not random settling noises. Footsteps. Steady, paced, the sound of shoes on old boards. They started right near the door. Then they walked past the fireplace. Then along the wall beside me. And then, this is the part that made my stomach drop. They continued out, as if whoever it was simply left the room. I froze with the mop in my hands and followed the sound with my eyes like that would help. Like I might catch a shadow or movement in my peripheral vision. But there was nothing. Just me and the lights and the cold pressing down on my shoulders. I didn't finish mopping. I didn't check the kitchen or call out or do any of the brave things people pretend they'd do. I grabbed my coat. I shut everything down. I set the alarm, and I left. I left so quickly I nearly fumbled the keys. I crossed the little courtyard at the back, heart thudding, telling myself I was being ridiculous. And as I got close to the back gate, it swung open in front of me. On its own. And the second I stepped through, it slammed shut behind me so hard the metal rattled. I stopped and stared at it, breathing like I'd been running. And the thing is, it wasn't windy. Not even a bit. No gusts, no weather, no reason. Just that gate opening like it wanted me out, and shutting like it was pleased I'd gone. I walked home fast, shoulders hunched, trying not to look back. And all I could think was, whatever happened in that room, it wasn't for me. That morning, I wasn't welcome there. So, I moved into this apartment at the very end of October with two of my friends, Noah and Camille, and we were honestly just excited to have our own place together. New-ish building, clean hallways, Nothing creepy about it. Or at least, that's what we thought. About 2 weeks after we moved in, I was standing at the sink washing dishes, half zoning out, when I heard it. Our front door handle moving. Not the door opening, just that very specific sound of the handle turning, like someone's about to come in. I froze with my hands still in the soapy water and waited for the usual follow-up. Keys jingling, the lock clicking, the door swinging open, one of my roommates calling out, "Hey, I'm home." But nothing. 5 seconds passed, then 10. Just dead quiet. At first, I tried to be logical. Our neighbor's door is right next to ours, so I told myself I must have mixed up the sound. But later that day, I heard the neighbor actually leave. Door opening, door shutting. The heavy fire door down the hall slamming like it always does. And the weird part is, that hallway noise is usually kind of muffled from inside our place. This sound earlier? It was right there, like it came from our own door. After that, it didn't stop. Weeks went by, and all three of us would hear it. Sometimes a few times a week, sometimes nearly every day. Always just the handle. Never the lock. Never footsteps. Never the door opening. And because our front door always stays locked, and we each have our own keys, it made even less sense. Then it started happening with the other door too. The one that leads from the living area into the corridor where our bedrooms are. Sometimes it sounded like that handle was being tested, like someone was trying to slip into the hallway quietly. And then came the moment that made my stomach drop. A couple nights ago, Noah was going back and forth between his room and the hallway, unpacking and moving things around. Camille and I were in my room with the door mostly closed, just chatting. Suddenly Noah comes in and goes, "Okay, you're not going to like this." He said he watched the corridor door handle go down, slowly, like an actual hand was pressing it. Then the door eased shut on its own, and then the handle lifted back up like normal. We immediately started doing the usual scrambling, checking windows, blaming drafts, blaming pressure changes, blaming literally anything that made sense. But it was cold out, so the windows were shut tight. No air moving, no fan on, nothing. And Camille and I had been in my room the whole time, nowhere near the hallway. Last night was worse. It was around 11 p.m., and Camille and I were still in my room. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet where you can hear the fridge cycling on and off. And then we heard it. Handle down. Then again. Then again. 3 times total, but spaced out in a way that felt deliberate. First, there was about a minute between the first and second. Then only about 15 seconds before the third one. Like whatever it was decided to get impatient. We just stared at each other in silence, not even speaking. Like if we made noise, it would somehow make it more real. And this morning around 10, we heard it so loudly, so clearly, that both of us instantly thought Noah must have come home. That exact, "someone's here" sound. But he wasn't. The part that keeps messing with my head is that this isn't some ancient creaky building where you can blame settling wood and rattling pipes. The whole complex is relatively new, built sometime in the mid-2010s. The doors are solid. The hardware feels modern. It's not the kind of place that acts old. So now we're stuck with this weird routine where we'll be sitting around, perfectly normal evening, and then, out of nowhere, one of us will go quiet and tilt our head like, "Did you hear that?" Because we always do. And the worst part is how familiar the sound has become. Like our apartment has started reminding us, gently but consistently, that someone, or something, keeps trying the doors.